Now, oh, okay, I had a bit of a glitch there. Sorry, everyone. I'm so sorry about that. Well, here we are, folks. Bit of a sound mix up there. Sorry, but I think I got it worked out. Man, I'm still learning a lot of this new YouTube stuff. Welcome, everyone, to Clobberin Time, issue number 37, or really, more accurately, 737. I hope you are all hearing me there. I don't have the old sound checker like I used in the old days, so please, if you are in the chat, please let me know if you are hearing me. You'd be doing me a great favor. In the meantime, I'm going to pretend like you are, and if you're not, and if I'm not, I'm just going to cry. So I'm a big baby today, but I'm here, and more importantly, though, I have a wonderful guest for us tonight. Tonight, we will be doing something that, well, I've done it for a long time. I've defended the show that we're going to be talking about for a long time, and I now have an ally that I am so happy about. And I'm going to say hello before we get started, just to all you wonderful people in the chat. The great Chris Persia, master of the wrenches. I guess someone will eventually tell me if they're hearing me or not. I don't know. We'll find out. It's a mystery right now. That Chris Persia, thank you so much, my good friend. I know I can count on you. And of course, the great Lord Toth had popped in earlier. Thank you, sir, for being here. Listen, Captain Trek. All right, buddy. Thank you for popping in, man. I do appreciate it. Canadian Spider-Man does whatever a Canadian Spider-Man can. And you're probably hoping I stop saying that to you every time you show up, buddy.
I'm sure he loves it.
I hope he does. But if he doesn't, I understand. Anyone else who was here that I may have missed, please just raise your hand so I can say hello to you. In the meantime, well, thank you, buddy. I appreciate that, Canadian. I have with me, now for the third time, a wonderful, wonderful guest whom I'm just always thrilled to get a chance to visit with and talk to. We are going to be talking about something that is near and dear to our hearts tonight. So I want you all to please, you can virtually clap, you can emoji clap, or clap in your hearts, or at home, or make noise, whatever you want to do, for the wonderful, the amazing, the beautiful, and the talented RAQUEL BRIGGS.
Thank you so much. What a beautiful and warm welcome. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here. Hail to the chat. Welcome, everyone. And yeah, Clobberin, it's so great to be on the show with you again.
Thank you so much for being here. I'm really looking forward to this and have been wanting to do it for a long time. Zathras, not know, understand, but Zathras do. He'll get that one because he's a Babylon 5. I mean, if he named himself Zathras, he's a Babylon 5 freak. We've talked about that. I was talking about, what was it, the other night, I think Zathras popped in, and I was talking about Deep Space Nine, and he had to throw it at Babylon 5 is better. Hey, man, I don't blame you. I mean, I used to say that too, but I don't know now. It's tough for me because I love them both. Well, Babylon 5, one day I'll let you do a show about Babylon 5 Zathras, and
yes,
we'll talk about that because it got a bum deal the way it was ended and everything, man. It kind of got short shrift there a little bit.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, and incidentally, as you know, everyone, those of you who are familiar with the whole Babylon 5 versus Deep Space Nine argument,
yes,
between which started and what was based on what, David Cullen. Yes, David Cullen. No, what's that guy's name? Oh my God, I can't believe I forget his name. There's a guy who did a video. I'll find out what it is later. Everyone has a video where he talks about both of them. It's very goes into great detail about the history of that.
Yeah, I think you are talking about Cullen. You're talking about the very intelligent Irishman who has a
yes.
Yes, Cullen is he's a great Irishman, and he's a heck of a smart guy, and
I love
he
him.
definitely knows his stuff, and he does very comprehensive videos. So if you're thinking Cullen, I'm going to say, yeah, that's the name, and I think his first name is David.
Maybe Dave Cullen. It's been a while since he has a great video about that, because he does other types of commentary, but Computing Forever was one of his pages, and he has another one. He does politics and things like that, but he also does. He likes Star Trek a lot. He's a big Trek fan, and he likes the right stuff, of course. And he did a video talking about the history of that whole thing, where the similarities and the things that went on in the early days of creating both shows. It's very good. It talks about how much is similar in between the shows and how much that maybe Babylon 5 was kind of taken from a little bit by the Trek producers and anything?
A little bit.
A little bit.
A little bit.
My thing about all that, that whole thing there is, Raquel, it gave us, for me, it gave us 2 great shows instead of 1. So it all worked out.
Yes.
Yeah. But there's another TV show we're going to be talking about tonight. And this one, I've often referred to it. I don't know if this is the kind of thing you can say anymore without somebody getting offended, but too bad we offended. We're clobberers here. So it's often referred to as the redheaded stepchild of Star Trek. At least I've always go for that.
Fitting because I'm a redhead. So nice. I'm all on it. My avatar, I'm a Vulcan, but
yes.
Because of cosplay. But yes, I'm a redhead. So it's very fitting that this would be the redhead of the Star universe.
Yeah, nice. And I love redheads. So that's another topic right there. But that old saying, the redheaded stepchild, it does get treated like, it always has been treated like that by Trek fandom, where usually kind of before Enterprise came out, but before, when the other shows were on, people were still, there were a lot of us who preferred the original series, but people had their preferences. They might have liked one of the others better, but they usually didn't dump on the other ones that much. And then after Enterprise got going,
it's a lot to do with syndication, right? And I think that at the height of cable television and the height of accessibility and the height of Star Trek and Star Trek reruns, I think that an often neglected point is that was at the apex of Star Trek fatigue. It's easier to discard the newbie if you have this apex, this massive convergence of availability of reruns, of new stuff coming out. And so I think it might have just it entered the room at the wrong time. Have you ever entered a room where there's just it's a din, everyone's talking all at once, and you just say to yourself, well, maybe this wasn't a good idea, and then you take 2 steps back out and close the door? That's sort of what I feel like happened to Enterprise. And tonight we're going to be talking about the good, the bad, and the ugly. Somebody play the song for me.
Damn it. Now I wish that's the one thing I miss about my old BTR days. I had a soundboard. I would have actually had the song on there.
Yeah.
I don't know, Ennio Morricone. I do have that, of course, in my repertoire. That wonderful, and I love that movie though.
Yes.
But yes, it relatively early on, actually when it was still on the air. I don't know how many of you out there used to go on the Star Trek Online message boards, but I did a lot. And, obviously there was a general one, but there was also one for each series, right? And the Enterprise ones, well, there were fans, of course. There were people who liked it. No question about it. And there, but there were a lot, unlike on any of the other boards, there were some really hateful people about it, to be honest, that hated it. Again, if you went on the original series board, people would just be talking about the show. Even Next Gen, they just talked about the show. Deep Space Nine. There wasn't a lot of conflict, and even on Voyager, I didn't go on that one much really. But even on that one, you didn't have people like constantly going after anyone who happened to like the show. There were people that were, you talk about trolling, that would just, they really, if you went on and, for example, if you wanted to have a conversation about the latest episode of Enterprise and you were just talking about it a little bit, there would be people that would go on there. There were a couple of them that they had to jump in there and just talk about what a piece of trash it was, just because they hate the show. I'm like, dude, all right, we get you hate it, fine. We're talking about the show. If you have anything interesting, critical to say, that's fine. But it really got a lot of unfair treatment, in my opinion, and still to this day does.
Well, I think there's also a knowledge continuum, right, within the Trek community. And I think that, that people are reluctant to divulge their exact place on that knowledge continuum in Star Trekdom. And I think that has a lot to do with it. I think a lot of times if people feel more knowledgeable, if they can chime in and say something nasty, and sort of seem like that they have it all in hand. But there was a great deal of like really bad stuff being said back and forth on the private BBS forums and stuff, pre-Twitter. But yeah, I think that had a lot to do with some people just kind of wanting to be a part of the community, and they were saying bad stuff all the way around. Possibly one of the worst things that you can say to me as a Trekkie from the mid '70s is that it's campy, or that it breaks my heart when people say cheesy to me. They say, "Oh, that Wes, it's so much fun. It's so cheesy." But I'm thinking, as a scholar, I'm thinking about all of the comparative literature in it, and I'm thinking about all the illusion in it, and I'm thinking about all the philosophy in it, and I'm thinking to myself, so you find Spinoza cheesy? Have you read Ethics? Because yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. Well, you had someone say that about the original series the other day to you that just started watching it on Twitter, and I wanted, I look, because I don't know, he's a nice person. I don't know him personally, but I said, oh, I hate when people. I mean, it's not like he didn't like. He said he liked it, but he called it cheesy. I can't stand that.
Yes. And it's almost a mortal wound to a true Trekkie.
It's not cheesy.
Yeah, it's not cheesy at all, and it's actually extremely intellectual. And of course, it was canceled for being so cerebral. And once again, I point to that illusion and that philosophy in the show. So,
yes.
Yeah, so, Star Trek fans come and go, but the hardcore Trekkies, the OG Trekkies, which of course stands for Original Gangster, the original gangster Star Trekkie people, the real Trekkers, the real Trekkies are here. And I was here when we were only Trekkies. There were no Trekkers. So let's get it on like Donkey Kong.
Yes. I look, absolutely. And again, by the way, look, if was it like, oh, by the way, Eric K, thank you for being here, sir. Great to see you, my friend. The great Eric K, good to see you, buddy. But like was exactly said, he said he liked the show, but the Temple Cold War was dumb. And that's perfectly fine. If you think something's dumb on the show, it could be something I think's cool and you think's dumb, because you still like the show. And by the way, not only that, it's okay to not like the show. If someone legitimately watched it and didn't like it, that's cool. But I think I hear a lot of people say they watched one or two. They watched it 20-something years ago, and they're almost 20 years ago, rather. And then they just say it's bad, it's all kind of stuff, but they don't really know anything about it.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what gets me.
Our Babylon 5 guy here, though, at 812, he says, I like the show, but the temporal Cold War was dumb. Yeah, and of course, even wording, a Cold War means that there are no armaments being exchanged, so there's no gunfire, and people aren't dying. A Cold War is when there's a stalemate, because it's extremely terrifying that the ultimate weapon will be used. So yes, most certainly the writers definitely should have looked into temporal and Cold War a little bit more, and that is something that we must concede. But we're going to get to that when we get to
yeah.
Let's talk about the good first. And if we're going to get into the good, I have prepared a little bit of a tiny paragraph on where I'm coming from. See, tonight we're going to talk about canon. Tonight we're going to talk about the good, the bad, the ugly. So I want everyone at home to understand where I'm coming from rhetorically, so we can set the stage for my position in this argument, in this defense of Enterprise. And with that, I'll say it, and then we can get underway and figure out if we agree with me or not, and if Clobberin would like to add to it. So here's my position, folks. The good. Gene Roddenberry would have loved this show. No gobbledygook. If we are going to talk about what's good, we ought to go where few Trekkies have gone before. That is, saying succinctly what makes for good Star Trek. And in so doing, we need to openly define what Star Trek is, specifically, all about. Why it's lived in the hearts and minds of so many people for over a half a century. Clearly, this is much more than television. This is culture, a mirror and a wishing well for humanity. This is the place the human spirit goes 2, in the seconds between closing your eyes and making a wish, blowing out the candles, or tossing the coin in the fountain. So I've assembled a list, and here it is. The original series is often cited as hopeful, optimistic. It's an optimistic cultural artifact. Star Trek must be sanguine, bullish, disposed to look on the bright side, no matter the situation or the odds. Star Trek is often cited as being progressive. It is often called political, but this is incorrect. Political issues and social issues should not be conflated to a degree where social becomes interchangeable or wholly synonymous with political or partisan. The great bird of the galaxy told Humanist magazine right before he passed away that when a television show becomes political, too partisan, it chases away the viewer. It's important to tell people about this because it demonstrates that he was cognizant of the fact that if a television show becomes too didactic, it has a political ulterior motive and seeks to admonish the viewer, then in so doing, it turns away the very people it is meant to engage. So here we see Star Trek cannot be preachy. It cannot be filled with self-righteous condemnation. Instead, it must engage the viewer in critical thinking, allow the viewer to see both sides and decide for themselves. Star Trek must also be nerdy, and I mean truly nerdy, not geeky, but nerdy. Isaac Asimov, Stephen Hawking, and NASA were not watching science fantasy. They were watching science fiction, science futurism. So long story told long, Star Trek must be hopeful, optimistic, bright, non-political, edifying, questioning. It was rejected by the network for being too cerebral, so it must be intelligent. What are your thoughts, Clobberin?
I love all of that. I was you hearing an echo?
No, I'm plugged in. I'm plugged in. I'm plugged in.
How about now? What about now?
I don't hear an echo, but do the folks
Okay.
at
I don't know what it is. We're good. I mean, how about now?
I don't hear anything. How about
Okay.
at home?
I don't know.
Do you
Just
hear an
started.
echo?
Yes, I'm hearing myself. I wasn't before. Weird. Oh well, it was. I'll try to work around it. I don't know. It's strange. I wasn't hearing myself before. I love what you just read. That all of that really, really resonates with me. I hope everyone's still hearing me. Let me know if you're not, or if you're all hearing an echo. Please let me know.
No, I'm hearing you perfectly fine with no echo.
Okay. And now let's see. How about now? Say something. Hello, hello.
Hi, hi, hi.
Okay, it's gone, I guess. So if you're all hearing me, everyone, let me know, please. Okay. Oh, thank you. Okay, I don't know what happened. I don't get it. I didn't do anything differently. I don't think you did. So,
No, I'm still plugged in like I usually am.
it might be a StreamYard thing. I don't know. It could be something. Anyway, I really love everything you wrote there because as we all know, we're not gonna get off into the weeds. I'm just gonna say that so many people now tell you that you have to be of a certain political mindset or you can't be a Star Trek fan, and they always say, and if you say Star Trek shouldn't be political, as you just talked about, they say it's always been political, but you just laid out why it is not. It's philosophical, and it's fair-minded. It's open. It's about everything so many of us cherish. Yes. About being open-minded, about being accepting, and when you don't agree with something, trying to at least understand it. That's all so Star Trekian. And I don't know what what you talk about how Gene Roddenberry would love it. I have to believe that. I mean, I don't know if it's true or not. Mark with a C, thank you for popping in. But I have to believe that as well. I think he would have. I mean, obviously he would have wanted to, if he were in charge, he would have wanted to do it his own way. Do it his own way, perhaps. Would he agree with every decision they've made? I couldn't even say. But I think he would agree with if you were to just get him to sit down and ask him, he would say the spirit is there.
Yes.
The Star Trek spirit is there.
Yes.
And that's one of the most wonderful things about the show. Another thing I love about it is, prequels are. I'm kind of one of those doesn't usually like a prequel too much. It doesn't really. I'm not all that big on prequels per se.
Mm-hmm.
But and see, multiple things can be true at the same time. I love this show, but I've said they probably shouldn't have done a prequel. And I've always had people say to me, well, then why do you love the show if you think they shouldn't do a prequel? I say, because, the proof is in the pudding. It's still a great show.
Yes.
And should they maybe have done a couple of short TV films or miniseries and then do something else? I think maybe that's a better idea, but this is what Berman and Braga and these guys wanted to do. And all I got to say is, if you're going to do it well. Yeah. And they did. They gave us a great crew. They gave us great characters. They gave us great stories about the first ship of the Federation, before the Federation, of Starfleet. And everything you said, you just nailed it all. But I just love it.
We have, you and I share so many opinions on Star Trek and so many opinions on media. It's one of the reasons why I just love coming to this show and interacting with you and our lovely chat and all of your followers and subscribers, because, it's just,
thank you.
It's very hard not to go to a con these days and mingle with your fellow Trekkies and to be able to talk like this and to be able to just really enjoy yourselves, just enjoy yourselves over Star Trek. For me,
yes, it's supposed to bring people together. Sorry.
Yes, absolutely. And for me, I have a few points that I think that are very, very good about Star Trek, and I'm going to say them, and we'll see what you have to add or perhaps take away, or what the chat has to say about it. So if I look at the good in Enterprise, what Clobberin was talking about how they did a good job, I'm going to have to go back to this good, the bad, and the ugly theme, and we're talking about this rhetoric and this canon and being able to defend it. Well, here's what I have to say, and maybe think about this and see what you folks think at home. The good for me is expressed in a believable ship with the believable tech that fits in the timeline. Inasmuch, even those who are sticklers with star dates can appreciate the rollback that fits with TOS. Because, of course, it should have less tech than TOS. But you have to remember that when you're an author, you have to help suspend the imaginary world. And in order to suspend belief and capture somebody in that imaginary world, you have to bring the story up to snuff so that someone can feel as though they can immerse themselves in this imaginary world. So I think they did that to a degree that that is completely acceptable, because if you're a relatively intelligent person, you can say, okay, they moved the tech forward a little bit, but it's to help us suspend our belief. And, it's quite funny, because I think that this, only now that we see Star Trek, the non-Trek, the crap after 2005, people are now starting to see that their grief and gripe with how we had to move the tech forward a little bit, they're starting to appreciate just how little Enterprise did do that, how much respect Enterprise did have. Because, of course, now we have Nintendo Mario golf cart happening in the new stuff.
Yes.
So we have a bright ship, and it's cramped. It's like the actual space station. We have costuming that is in keeping with what would have been worn before TOS, these one-piece jumpers, these coveralls, this military dress with some deviations. We have the Enterprise is bound to science fiction. The ship is not magical. It does not use fantasy as a crutch. She's often outmanned, outgunned, and technologically inferior. I can also imagine Kirk on this ship. I can imagine the whole TOS crew on this ship. Science-driven episodes. Oh, yes, there are also science-driven episodes that challenge us to think critically about social issues and human behavior and exploration. Our vulnerability, not our superiority. And of course, that's in Similitude, Affliction, Dear Doctor, Cogenitor, and The Unexpected. What are your thoughts, everyone?
I like a lot of what you were covering there, and like what Mark with the C had talked about. Again, just pointing out one of these things because you were mentioning how they were so outgunned, and you just really they were infants in space travel, and they didn't have a lot of protection. They didn't have a lot of the things that you see in the 23rd or 24th century Trek iterations. And it says he liked how the Mark C says he liked how the NX-01 was low tech, and they started that without shields. Yes, they had hull plating, polarizing.
Yes.
Compared to Discovery with all that stupid tech that they have, basically. So, and yes, they from get-go, they were the only, in fact, you know what? The only thing that you might be able to say, and it doesn't bother me, but people say, as far that may sort of, I don't want to use the word contradict, but the original series, in the sense that they did have a Warp 5 engine, and on the original series they were they could go a lot faster, but they usually just kind of went Warp 1 and Warp 2 everywhere.
Yes.
And that's such a minor. People complain about that. That's not me. It's others. That doesn't bother me in the least.
Yes.
But not only that, Warp 5, the Enterprise on the show, Trip did not like to get near Warp 4.5 a lot. It was extremely taxing on the engines. Warp 5 they could not sustain long.
Yeah.
They had, as has been pointed out in the chat, they had phase cannons. They did not have any. They did not have photon torpedoes until the fourth. Right, until the fourth season. Yeah, in the fourth season they finally got these photonic torpedoes.
Yes.
They had transporters, but they were kind of scared to use them. They didn't use them.
And
except in emergencies.
McCoy, because McCoy never wanted to get on a transporter. He always
absolutely
natural. And this is hearkening us. See how it harkens us back to what we love, the reasons why we love Star Trek. The whole idea of transportation was and transporter devices and dematerializing. That was all Gene's idea. Gene invented this form of teleportation. It came completely out of the mouth of Gene Roddenberry. And he was asked how they were going to pay for all of this landing on all of these different planets, how they were going to shoot those seeds, and how they were going to pay all of these model makers and model creators and shoot all these seeds. Where was the money going to come from? And of course, Gene, when his back is up against the wall, genius that he is, and genius writer that he is, he just said, well, why don't I just invent this dematerializing thing? We'll just reassemble their atoms on the planet. And he came up with that whole idea. So that the whole idea of them not wanting to use the transporter just makes me feel so close to Gene. It's like Gene is in the room while we're watching this.
Yep. It is so. One of the wonderful things about the show is that they are alone as well.
Mm-hmm.
That's another thing. How they're not, how they're low tech.
Mm-hmm.
In that sense, I'm mentioning the transporters for a second. In the fourth season, they did a whole story about the original. And I don't know if he was the inventor, but the one who perfected the transporter. An episode called Daedalus, if you remember.
Yes.
And which was really good, I thought. And it talked about, again, how this is, since it is 100 years before Kirk's time, beaming all over the place was still fairly new. And again, I like that means this show, and they did it a lot on this show, explored a lot of the things that we took for granted on the original series and even on Next Generation. Remember, one of my favorite episodes of Next Generation was the one where Barclay was suffering from transporter phobia. Remember, he was they were acting like, look, it is really the safest way to travel.
Yes.
There's so many. It is so rare that anybody dies in a transporter accident. But in Star Trek: The Motion Picture, what do we have? A transporter accident and that. So even 100 years past Star Trek: The Motion Picture, transporters are just nothing. I mean, there is no big deal about it. They're the easiest way to travel, and unless a ship is damaged or something, it is just very few people are phobic about it now. But in the very first episode of Enterprise, Broken Bow, I like the exchange at the very beginning between Reed and Mayweather when they're talking. He says, "That's a transporter, huh?
Yeah.
I hope the captain isn't going to make us use it." And
No,
he said,
he wanted to put his dog through it.
When he put his dog there, exactly. When he put his dog in there,
Yeah.
I love that. There's so many nice little touches along the way about the show where they're dealing with what it's like to be explorers. And I've said before so many times, one of the fascinating things about especially the early two seasons, which get dumped on unfairly all the time, is that Archer does not have. He has there's no history for him to go off of.
No, there are no great captains for him to recall the Picard maneuver or the Kirk maneuver. All we have is Archer, and he's reaching out into the darkness, and literally and figuratively, and I felt that while I was watching it. Interestingly, I have to say this to the chat because the socio-historical context of how we add things into our folk tales and how we add things into our mythos and these wonderful shows we watch. You have to remember that people really like this whole idea of dematerializing and materializing and transporting, and people just onboarded this wonderful futurism because they were primed for it. We were racing to get to the moon. We just got to the moon. We were so excited about what we were going to find in the universe. And I love the things that Clobberin said, because when you bring all of that stuff together, it really helps you to put into focus how we took the transporter for granted. And Enterprise reminds us that we have no business taking that transporter for granted, because we were no longer filled with that state of unknowing or hope. We weren't wondering what science really could achieve. We had moved forward scientifically so much that we began to question if it would be possible.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much, Canadian Spider-Man.
Yeah. There it goes with the echo again. I don't understand it. Nothing. You haven't changed anything, have you?
No, I have.
It's gone again.
I've learned very early on in the streaming business that you got to ram those Apple buds into your ears and just leave them there all night, no matter how uncomfortable they are.
No, I hear you. That is, of course, true. Yes, it would not be wise to get into an argument about Trek, or I suspect anything else with Raquel. I'm going to go out on a limb. And Parrot Head, thank you for being here. And yes, Eric K, thanks for the correction. It was third season that they got the photonic torpedoes. Oh, yeah. That's what, yeah. Thank you, sir. I do appreciate that. I am a fuel. Let's see here. I'm a fuel. I love how the crew seem to get along. Yes, we should. A great cast.
Yes. And Gene would have loved the camaraderie, because remember, this is one of the things that Gene held very dear, that these people were military people and they were professionals. When you think of a Star Trek crew, I want you to think about a room full of emergency room doctors and staff, because that's the way the military is. You don't have people, standing around in the dark, hugging and crying like in Millennial Trek. What you have are professional people, and if they aren't behaving professionally, if they don't care and they don't learn to trust one another, and they don't become great friends that can rely on one another and towering professionals, people die. And that's very important. That's one of the things that makes that's another great point as to why Gene would love this show. You get along, you love one another, you are trapped in close quarters with one another, and your lives depend on one another. These are astronauts. These are not people who use mushroom technology and just hug and kiss and cannibalize one another. It's this ridiculous.
Yes, it is. They're wonderful characters, and there's the thing that when you talk about the good, remember we
oh goodness! Can we put up Chris's comment?
The echo of the temporal shift and I knew it had to be a special. I knew there had to be an explanation for that somewhere, boy. Thank you.
What an excellent comment. Yes.
Yeah, I agree with that, Eric. Eric, I can't argue with that, my friend. I do adore them. They're lovely.
My husband says that Jolene Blalock is
Mhm.
the most beautiful woman in all of Star Trek, and that Linda Park is a close second. And I completely agree with him. Have you heard the way that the costume people talked about these two women? They just
No.
said that dressing them was just an absolute pleasure because they were just elegant, beautiful women, and you could put anything on them. So it just fabulous, you guys. Just great comments. Yes, two beautiful women.
Oh yeah, they're wonderful. I love them so much. And again, when when you talk about the good, we did at the show not too long ago, of course, where we talked about the crews of all the shows, and we did go into characters. But when you start off, as I probably mentioned back when we did this before, I was not much of a Bakula kind of guy.
Yeah, me neither.
When this show started, I didn't watch Quantum Leap, and I get so much crap about that. People, you didn't like Quantum? Yeah, whatever. I didn't like it. What can I tell you? But so when I saw he was going to be the captain, I was kind of one of those, the Quantum Leap guy.
Yeah, I was skeptical. I was very skeptical. I think everyone was. But then he won us over because
he won me over.
He trusted his crew. Wasn't he just marvelous? And I've said this before in a previous episode where you and I have talked about these crews. But he was very much like Captain Kirk. He trusted his crew and never doubted them. And he trusted in their abilities. And yeah, just a marvelous, marvelous captain.
He won me over from get-go because automatically, because I've watched Broken Bow a lot. Yeah, I'm not going to get into arguing the whole temporal Cold War thing, whether that was questionable or not. Maybe they should not have done that. But still, I really did like the pilot.
Yeah.
And that one, because a pilot has to grab you.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's the Cage, whether it's Where No Man Has Gone Before, Encounter at Farpoint, the Emissary, with the Caretaker, all the pilots that have been all the tricks. And the least one that grabbed me the least was probably the Caretaker. But even Emissary, kind of took me a while to go after that. But I did like it. I thought Encounter at Farpoint does a good job of that. If the Cage had been allowed to run, and the Trek would have been very different. But that's a great pilot. And Where No Man Gone Before is great. So you got to really grab people with your pilot. And I thought Broken Bow did that.
Yeah, I think it did too. I think it did a great job. Could we pause for 1 second here in our adoration of our wonderful captain? And could we please Mark with the C's comment at 8:39 p.m. He says, Hoshi had to struggle to communicate with other species. Contrast that to Michael Burnham, who has the answer for everything, including an Iron Man suit that can time travel. Yes, Mark with the C. Not only is this a wonderful comment, but you raise a very important point, and that is that Hoshi was never an astronaut. So we have Uhura, and Uhura is actually more like me. So I studied communications and technology. I have a master's in communications and technology, and this is what Uhura studied. And of course, I looked up to her as a young kid and as a young woman. So I wound up going into communications and technology. But Uhura was communications, technology, and was an astronaut. And what's really cool is Hoshi was none of those things. Hoshi was actually a genius. And this is not hyperbole. This is the truth, guys. She was a genius linguist. And so when they were looking all around for someone who would be able to discover languages and help them, Hoshi got tapped for this. And Hoshi had a hell of a time becoming an astronaut. And I've talked about this before, how she was terrified that the hull would break apart and they'd be cast into space. She could hear every nuance in the engines and even detected the Suliban before anyone else, because just her acute sense of hearing and just her attention for detail. And Hoshi was such a great character. And that is such a great comment, Mark with the C. Thank you so much for adding that in. Yes, Hoshi was just terrific.
Well said, Mark, with a C. Thank you. But yeah, yes. And again, you talk about how we're the good, the bad, and the ugly. And since we're starting out with the good, in my opinion, this is television. Any show for me, if you don't have the characters, then I'm out. So I think it's good to start with the characters, because without them, there's nothing. There's nothing, because you can have a story that's just sort of so and still enjoy an episode if you like the characters enough, and there can be things that hold you there because you just love the characters. Also, you could have a really good story. If the characters are garbage, it's going to fall flat. And this show did a great job of establishing characters, and it all starts with Archer, because his story, all of his things about his father, being the developer of the first the warp engine, we'll get to this more later about his conflict with the Vulcans.
We will.
But he did have a chip on it. Oh yeah, and he did have a chip on his shoulder of Vulcans. But I said he had a. What's that? I'm sorry, did I miss you? Yeah.
Oh no, I'm just amping you up, just nodding my head, saying, "Yeah."
Oh yeah,
he did. Yeah,
he did definitely, and he got me from get-go, because I guess when I first watched it, it didn't jar me about the Vulcans or anything like that. The people complain about them being on Earth or any of that kind of stuff. I just thought right away, this guy walks in there and starts mouthing off to the Vulcans and his superiors and just taking charge as a Kirk fan.
Yes.
Look, Picard's fine. At the time, I wasn't really big on the other shows. At that time, when this came on, I was original series, and I didn't really like the other ones that much. Things have changed in the last 20 years, but at that time, I'm a Kirk guy.
Me too.
So this is when he came in, and I was a broken record saying, "Wow, that is so Kirk."
Yes.
Now, obviously he doesn't act exactly like Kirk. I'm not saying he's copying Kirk, but he does things in a Kirk way. Well, he doesn't have the same kind of personality, but he does things in a Kirk way, and that's what I wanted to see in a captain. I didn't really want the diplomat that much. It's fine. I've grown up. I get that it's cool to have a Picard but I think a captain does have to be a bit aggressive.
Have you ever heard the term "the right stuff"?
Yes.
Okay. Well, our captain here has the right stuff, and the right stuff to step into the shoes of Captain Kirk. No, he was not copying. I completely agree. They didn't borrow from Kirk. But I'll tell you something. Archer and Kirk would have had a drink together, and they probably would have went home with a couple of really great-looking broads.
Absolutely. And look, Archer, he may not have been the player that Kirk was, but you had him. He definitely did okay for himself.
Yeah.
There's no question about that. And again, if you'll see in my profile picture, I love the fact that this is a captain of the Starship has a doggy. I love dogs.
Yeah.
I love Porthos, and I love the fact that, again, because you know what, each captain has their thing, if you will. Now, original series, the show was written at a time where they didn't write long character study episodes of television. It just didn't work that way.
Yep.
Whereas by the time the Next Generation comes around, you had whole stories that dealt with Picards and other characters. Kirk didn't get that a lot, but you still learned things about him. You knew some of the things he liked to do, things that are character building things.
Yep.
Well, and then of course, with the later iterations of the show, they did that a lot. Picard has his thing. He's a big into archaeology. He's obviously, like Kirk, he loves Shakespeare. And he's very literate, and he loves to ride horses. We know the things he likes to do. That's all good character stuff. We know Cisco likes baseball.
Yes.
He loves baseball, and he has other interests as well. We know all these. There's always something that is unique to each captain. Janeway, I guess she has some science background. There are things she's interested in as well.
Yes.
And then you have Archer. He has a dog. Of course, he's a pilot.
Yes.
He loves water polo. That was a new twist. I'm like,
yes.
Okay. Do people play water polo now? I don't know. Well, they do in that century.
Well, let me speak to that a little bit too, though, right? Like, not everybody is a geek. Geeks are really cool people.
No, you're right. You're right.
They like technical stuff. They collect things. They like comics. They're great people to be around. I love geeks. They're really great. And I have geek tendencies too. I'm going to tell you Control Alt Delete if you tell me you get the spinning wheel of death. But then there are also nerds, and nerds are slavish in their pursuit of education and edification. And I'll tell you something. A lot of nerds that I know, they don't participate in sports. Their sports are books. And I like cricket.
Right.
I really
Wow.
enjoy watching cricket, and I absolutely love billiards. So when I
Cool.
saw this captain come along and he likes water polo, I was thinking to myself, well, this is a genuine geek. This is a genuine nerd. This isn't some hulking football jock. This is actually like an actually intelligent guy who does come up from our demographic. He does come from our psychographic. This guy is one of us. And I like that he is truly what he would be if he were real.
I love the word because I'm not, usually I'm not, when it comes to the word real, it means something to me here because that's one of the things why these characters, why you hear so much about how horrible the characters on STD are, because they're not real. They're so made up. They're so narcissistic. They're so a reflection of the, well, again, without going too deep into that, where you can't, I don't like using the term relate sometimes, but you do have to be able to relate to some characters in some ways, just not see yourself 100% as a mirror into the character the way you hear all this kind of crap now. Like,
well, I think that's really messed up to have to want to see yourself on the stage. I want to be taken to different places and experience different things in my life. I don't watch King Lear and think to myself, I don't see myself here.
Right,
so
absolutely.
But at the same time, I sort of think about it in a different way as an author. And that is that these texts, these stories, I believe that the best way to describe it is they are places we go. So if we go into these rooms and we open up these volumes and we open up these books and we turn on these television shows, we're entering a story. It's a place we're going. If we don't like the people there and the people there are pieces of crap or they're not written well and they're not anybody we want to hang out with or get to know or learn from, then we won't watch it anymore. So I love things that are well wrought in a way in which I can go there and be in that situation with those people. I can immerse myself in the story. It's a place to go. So make the people in it worthwhile.
If you don't like the people and you don't, well, like I say, the whole see yourself thing, they take it too literally. I look nothing like it. I'm nothing. I'm nothing like this guy right here. But I see a lot of what I see, what I inspire to be in a guy like Archer, Kirk, and others.
Yes.
And my favorite character on the show, Archer might be it, or it may be Trip. I love, and again, another reason why this show is so good is because it all starts with the characters. As I'm the broken record, it says that a lot, and you got to have characters, even more so than any of the other iterations. Since these characters are a little bit closer to our century, they feel more like they feel closer to our century. A brief aside to make a point. This gentleman right here does a great show called The Orville.
Oh, The Orville is fantastic. It's the new Star Trek, folks. It goes from 05 straight to Orville.
Well, and this is more reminiscent of The Next Generation. But what's one of the great twist about it for me is the characters are almost more like they are on Enterprise because they talk closer to 21st century people than they do on Next Generation. So it's a wonderful hybrid, I think, character-wise. So I just use this as an example. They make characters really not a mirror image of yourself like the modern-day narcissists want for STD, but people that you can see yourself in a different way. Yeah. And Trip really epitomizes that because he's a good old boy from Florida. He's a genius with with science and with the engineering and things like that. And yet not the kind of guy you would just, if you meet him, you would even suspect to be so smart. It's just kind of a everyday kind of a regular guy. And yet, again, multifaceted in so many ways. They really
also an old-fashioned gentleman that has a lot of McCoy in him. I feel like he would drink a mint julep with you on a porch somewhere. and he would open the door for you. And I do have to say that that he is my daughter, my adult daughter's favorite character in this series. And that's saying something because, you know, for young women everywhere, this is an attractive young guy. And wow, when he took his coveralls off, he was really good to look at. I mean, I wanted to see him in Decon quite a lot, and he's not even my type. But yeah, this guy in Decon, he ain't hard on the eyes, folks.
He is. Well, that I'm more. I like Paul more personally, but okay, I'm just kidding. But yeah, boy, was I envious of him. But I love him though. I love this guy because he's got all those abilities of an engineer, and yet he's like a regular guy. He comes off as he's a Southerner, you know, I'm that. So he loves catfish.
I love catfish.
He loves football. Even
don't like football.
Yeah, he loves. He was actually having a conversation.
Yeah.
With a Vulcan about pro football. Well, this guy. So I guess they still have it then. They're not going to have it for another couple of weeks. I don't know what he's talking about. But anyway, that's really science fiction that there's going to be football in that time. But anyway, he's just a regular guy. He's got a great sense of humor. The McCoy comparison is really excellent. Yeah. I like that. I never really thought about it that way, but there's a McCoy, you know, a sense to him. I think that's excellent. I love hearing.
That's what North America's all about. I mean, the great Southern gentleman is it's a real thing, and it sure was nice to have it back on screen because, you know, I am a massive fan of D. You know, first is the great Leonard Nimoy. He's next level for me, and then there's D, and then of course there's Uhura, Nichelle. And you know, William Shatner comes shortly thereafter. But, you know, for me, just having a great Southern gentleman who's just good looking, smart as a whip, just really sweet and kind. And the things that this man goes through, you know, I talked a little bit earlier about Unexpected. And if we could circle back on that and talk about Unexpected. I love the way that his character
that was a great one.
I thought it was beautiful. At first he was completely freaked out because he couldn't believe that it happened to him. But then he was just absolutely so wonderful about it. And look at the way that look at what happened to him in Similitude.
Yes, we talked about that one a lot a few weeks back. That is, I mean, they did so much with this character. There's another thing.
Cogenitor, but it wasn't just character. These were the portrayals of a fine Southern gentleman, a good-looking, smart, wonderful person who was enjoyed being pregnant, was willing to be pregnant, he was just so beautiful and wonderful. Look at the way that he behaved in Cogenitor. And of course, here we're talking about, you know, these handmaids that we've had in a society since the dawn of time. You know, you can't have a baby, so you bring in a young girl into your family and you treat her like an object, and she has a kid for you, and then you basically throw her away like garbage. And that horrified him. And he wanted her to be edified. He wanted to teach her to read. He wanted her to have a life. This speaks volumes about the grand Southern gentleman. McCoy, DeForest Kelley, would have loved this character and how he portrayed the fine Southern gentleman. Just absolutely love this character.
Me too. He's my favorite, and I love Archer just about as much. I love the relationship between him and Archer, and I also love the relationship between him and Malcolm Reed, who is another underrated character.
Yes. Oh, Canadian Spider-Man. No, yes. D is D-E-E. And how I came by knowing DeForest Kelley by that name is that's actually what his friends and family call him.
Yes, they do.
I've heard it so much because I've spent a great deal of time investigating his treatment of homeless animals and helping animals. Of course, he started that giant animal rescue shelter in the United States, and you guys even turned it into a Netflix special. So I've spent a lot of time getting to know DeForest Kelley. And of course, yeah, when you say D at a con, that's D-E-E. Everybody knows you're talking about the great DeForest Kelley. It was his nickname, sweetheart.
Yes, I love that man. Oh, man. It is always so fun when I'm watching old Westerns and he pops up on Gunsmoke or whatever. Not Gunsmoke. I think it was, was it Virginia? A few different ones, I guess. I forget which ones. But he was on a bunch of old Westerns anyway. Bonanza, I think, yes. And a couple other ones that I've seen him.
He was a villain.
Always a villain, right. Always a villain.
Yeah, so like when he was the doctor, it's like, what's going on here? From a generation of people who watched Have Gun Will Travel.
My all-time favorite Western. That show I love so much. It's so good. Good luck. Paladin should have went back in time and met Paladin. That would have been a great episode.
What a beautiful thing to say, Canadian Spider-Man.
I don't know, but it would not surprise me if there was any of that. Yeah.
Yeah. There was a great deal of research being done by the writers of this show, and for hardcore TOS fans, we know that the research is there because there are these little nods and homages that we see throughout the cast's behavior, in the scripts. There's just a lot of really wonderful stuff happening. So that is most welcomed speculation, Canadian Spider-Man. If he did, awesome. Oh, and just named Bonanza. Yeah, I watch Bonanza every night.
Yeah, he was on. You remember there was a Bonanza episode that had Madeline Rue and Ricardo Montalban.
Yeah.
Yeah, remember that? That was crazy.
Yeah.
But it's a great friendship that they started up, not only between Archer and Trip, but between Trip and Malcolm. Shuttle Pod 1 and was it 2 days and 2 nights when we went to Riza, and I really loved that. I thought that was great. Again, just a wonderful job with the characters on this show. They make it. We look to Paul.
Beauty.
Beautiful.
Can we get a wolf whistle? Can we get a collective wolf whistle from
yeah, go for it, guys. Yep, she was fantastic.
Just absolutely
gorgeous,
beautiful woman. And like my husband always says, my husband is not a nerd. My husband is a geek. He's a programming engineer. And he is new to Star Trek since being married to me, because it's ridiculous being married to me. But he was saying, that when he looks at all of the Vulcanians, when he looks at Vulcans, he sees T'Pol as the ultimate Vulcan next to Nimoy. And what the way she plays Vulcanian is not derivative. In some of these people, we are seeing them trying to behave like Spock or trying to behave like Leonard Nimoy instead of just, creating that character, right? And so here we see Jolene actually creating a Vulcan that we can really sink our teeth into, that she really becomes real to us. She clenches her jaw on and off camera when she's trying to hold in her emotion. She's just wonderful to look at. Just a great actress, just an overall terrific casting. And I can't get enough of her. I think she is the best.
I just love her. And you know what, Zathras, you're not going to get an argument out of me because I do love T'Pol, but Susan Ivanova is a brilliant, wonderful character. Claudia Christian is fantastic in that role. So I don't compare the two, although I know they were both first officers. But she is, I love Claudia Christian. She's great. And on Babylon 5, Susan Ivanova is a wonderful character. So you won't get anything from me on that. Better, I don't know who's better, but I love both. But she is wonderful. No question. I love Ivanova. Jerry Ryan got me in trouble. My wife wanted to know what the heck I was watching when she was in her skin suit. I told her they were her implants. Oh my God. Oh boy, that's a good one.
Yeah, Jerry Ryan's outfit was a skeletal suit that had a lot of boning in it. It did enhance her cleavage substantially. and she did not like it. She has made several complaints about it, and it sort of got roped into a larger discussion about misogyny and patriarchy, and of course, everyone who has watched this cast knows that that as a communications and technology scholar, I think that's bunk. Because I would turn your mind's eye toward all of the men and women who have starred in epic period pieces throughout all of our films and stage plays, and they have all had to wear some type of corset or boning or slimming or crazy device to change their body shape in keeping with the time period. Moreover, I would like to forward a defense of beautiful men who literally have to torture themselves by eating inordinate amounts of food, by working out. Some men even destroy themselves with steroids so that they can get in these action shows, so that they can, be these characters. Men really go through hell, and they are picked over and objectified as much as women in this generation. So a preposterous argument on behalf of Jerry Ryan and every man, woman, and child who had to wear some type of period costuming, and for all of the men who literally starved themselves and did 7,000 sit-ups a day so that they could be Wolverine or Batman or whomever. Look at what's his name, who starred in The Machinist. My God, he's lucky he didn't die. Look at Matthew McConaughey when he played a man with HIV/AIDS. Just the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Oh, it was tight. Oh, sorry, Jerry. Where?
I missed the part where they held a gun on you and forced you to do it.
Yeah, and it's ridiculous, because if she would have been in Shakespeare, she would have had a corset up to her eyeballs. So it's the crap that happens on social media, just the things that fling out of people's mouths, and it's just, I don't know.
It's ridiculous. What's good for the goose is good for the gander. I mean, it'd be one thing if I mean, like you just said, it's entertainment and everybody gets objectified, men and women. And you know what? We like to watch it, and but no one forces them to do it. Go work at McDonald's.
But certainly no. Nobody forces you to do it. But to the finer point here, if you're going to be talking about being objectified and patriarchy and misogyny, as I said, that's certainly one of the sillier arguments I've heard.
Yeah. Eric, Eric K. I've never heard that one. It's an old joke, but I've never heard that one.
Oh.
Good one. I've never heard that one.
Eric, that's terrible. I feel bad for you, sweetheart.
Oh, man. Well, yeah, at least you had it for a while there, Eric. So there you go. I tell you, character, I'm not going to say anything about the actor because he aggravates me, but again, separate the art from the artist. I love Dr. Phlox. Yes. I absolutely think this is a wonderful character, so well written. He's like a big ball of energy and fun, but when he can get intense as well, and he can really, he has a lot of great exchanges with the whole crew, but especially with Archer.
Mm-hmm. I also like that they weren't sort of garish and ostentatious in presenting his species to us as viewers. I really enjoyed the fact that we saw this sort of exaggerated CGI, exaggerated smile, and then we see his, preposterously large webbed feet, and all the different things. Of course, him having a wife as well as a husband, and sort of living in this sort of a communal, sexual and relationship a civilization. It's just, we slowly get to know this character, and so he endears himself to us instead of just this comic presentation of aesthetics. So bravo to the writers on this one, and of course to the character as well, because he's very enjoyable. Personally, I've heard some things where he has been uncomfortable at times for fans. I cannot speak to that. I do know that that's the rumor, and yeah. But other than that, wow, what a great performance, and just a truly, truly wonderful character, wonderfully written character.
Yes, absolutely. And he had some. He tangled with Archer a little bit, but he was very loyal to them. I loved it. When they were going to go into the Expanse, and he just decided because he'd been there 2 years with them, he could have easily left, but he went with them, and Archer really needed him. He was very useful during the whole Xindi War. Great character, very well written, and we should give a little love to this guy because people said he was underused, but whether he was or not, Anthony Montgomery is really, really great as Travis, and I really like Travis.
Well, people compared Mayweather's plight to that of other characters on Voyager, that they were never fleshed out. Well, the reason why they weren't fleshed out on Voyager is because the writing sucked. The writing was just not good on Voyager.
Yeah.
They had a wonderful cast that they could have done so much with, and they really didn't. It's just Borg. But as far as Mayweather goes, I see him more like an O'Brien character or like a Worf character. The folks need to remember that we only had 98 episodes, a juxtaposition, 178. Well, do you recall when you started to get to know Worf? You started to get to know Worf in what, DS9? So, it's important that people always keep in mind that we didn't get to know Mayweather, and it wasn't because this show had crap writing. This show actually had really good writing. For our Mayweather, we did not have enough time, and we were just starting to get there.
Yes, absolutely, and that as it may, he did really great with what he did have, and he got again, like you say, they started giving him a little bit more. Could there have been more? I don't know. Like you say, you only have so much time in the day, but it would have definitely, I think, expanded more.
Yeah.
And
I think we would have wound up loving him as much as we love O'Brien, because this was a guy who was born and raised in space, and there would have been so many interesting and wonderful things that we could have learned about him, that we could have explored with him. But I do very much see him as an O'Brien and Worf character. And we ran out of time, and somebody just yelled, "Damn it, I want more seasons."
Me too.
Can we flash that just for like the next 3 hours? No, I'm kidding. Exactly, Canadian Spider-Man. That is exactly the truth. We needed more. This series deserved as much time as everyone else. And when we're judging this series, we ought to be cognizant of that 178 against 98. And it's not easy to do 98. And of course, you can cut off 4 episodes from that 98, because what you're essentially talking about is 94, because you have to have an in and you have to have an out. And so, we didn't have much, and we deserved 178.
Absolutely. And again, he did it, and whatever he had, he did a nice job at it. So
yeah,
we should have had more. But there's so there you go, as far as just a basic rundown of the characters again, because again, in my opinion, I don't know if everyone agrees or not, but I'm checked out of the show immediately if I don't get into the characters. And if you don't get me into the characters fairly early, I'm not going to be around for very long. I'll stick around a little bit if you can get me into the characters. I heard, I had to stop fairly quickly, everyone, with STD, but I watched most of the first season. I hate it, but just not just because of how anti-Star Trek it all is. It has horrible characters, poorly written characters, and now when I see it's starting its 3rd season, and people who are reviewing these episodes will tell you they're still just as bad as they ever were. Every single character is detestable and horribly written, and more to the point, these are people who have actually watched this thing. In fact, to review it, so like Doomcock, for example, has to watch it and stop it every 5 minutes. These are people who pay a lot of attention to the details when and I'm pointing this out for a reason, when they're reviewing these, like Gary, Doomcock, and a lot of other channels, right? Well, And still, when you hear the reviews, like I was listening to Gary and Doom talk about it last night, and they were saying this guy or that person, other than Mikey Spock, as they like to call her, and Georgie, one or two of these characters that are in it the most, they don't remember half the characters' names. Yeah. There's 3 seasons now. You're on season 3. Gary made a good point. I liked Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I thought it was a pretty good show. He made a good point. He said a lot of people don't really like the first season, but he said by the end of the pilot, I knew what the characters' names and I knew who they were.
Yeah. Well, like I said, because, people who write, like I do for, write for a living, that's, I think we all are sort of like-minded. And the way that I express that is, like I said, getting back to that idea of when you walk into a room, and when you walk into a room, if you don't get to know anyone and people aren't gregarious and friendly and interesting and wonderful, and there aren't libations and sensations, and you're not having a great time, you're never going back to that home ever again. You're never going back to that room again. You're never going back to that bar, that pub, or reading room ever again. And so, as writers, we're beholden to create that room, that story, that place where people go to enjoy themselves. And I just simply think that everything after 2005 is not enjoyable. I watched half of the first season of the STD filth. And it just made me post a whole bunch of memes about how flux could cure STDs.
Exactly. Yeah, and there's the thing. Again, I don't know these people.
It's vandalism. It's vandalism. These aren't characters. They don't follow the Star Trek. They don't. Garbage. It's garbage.
And I watched. I watched Picard for some stupid reason. Obviously, everyone knows Picard's name. Right now, if you decide what are the names of the characters, just as a test to go. Data was there. Oh, yeah, that's cheating. Riker and Troy. Yeah, that's cheating too. Let's see. What about everybody else? No, I can't. I mean, I'm sure I would remember if I really concentrated. And I'm sorry, if you watch 3, 4, 10 episodes of something and you could name 2 or 3 characters, it's bad stuff. It's bad writing. Yeah. And you could name every main character and even a lot of other characters and every other Trek, even if you don't like Voyager that much, just for example, you can name them all. They're they're memorable, but not here or not with STD. I mean, yeah. And that's just a bad show. And these people, when people rag on this show, which is why we're here, I don't think they really watched it that much. I've got the impression that most of the people who really hate it didn't give it much of a chance. Or maybe, again, it's been 20 years. Now, again, I'll be fair to an extent, Raquel. It's in that there's some things I'd watched when I was younger or many years ago that I didn't like very much. But if I many times I would go back and watch them later, and I can see some things in a different perspective. We're all, we change, we evolve. And I don't know, I've done that. I'm not saying everyone does, but some of them, I think I've talked to a lot of people that said they didn't really like it when they first saw it. And
I think intelligent people are in a constant state of growth. And I think that you should not be, if you're ideally a healthy person, you shouldn't be the same person you were when you were 20, 30, 40, or 50 years old. You should be, trying to self-actualize. You should be try to be the very best version of yourself. And of course, people change and their environment changes, and people shift and change with the ebb and flow of their life. So absolutely. But I would like to clarify though that I did like this show straight out of the gate.
I did. So did I.
But I think that is because of my intense love for TOS, and that I was able to see this extensive homage happening right underneath the current, and it was discreet, and it was lovely, and it was beautiful, and it was a lot of fun. I just really loved it. Could we put that comment again?
Which one, from Zathras?
Yeah, please.
Yes, what I liked about the show, the humans were the glue that held all of the species together. That is something that could have propelled the series in seasons 5, 6, and 7. Yes.
Bravo, bravo. There's nothing to add or take away from that. Bravo.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Zathras. Absolutely, that is excellent. And I do have, for example, I have a good friend of mine who loves this show with a fervor, just like you and I do, who tells me that on first glance he didn't like it. He was one of those, but and this is long, not too long after the show left the air. I think he went on back, and now he loves it. And
Yeah.
so that does happen. I mean, it's happened to me. Look like that. I've admitted that I really do like Next Generation and DS9 and even some Voyager in some way, a little bit. And I love Enterprise. So, but I was once, if you'd ever told me that anything, I would love anything other than the original series, I'd have just said, nah, I don't really care. But no, I love it all now, but nothing more than the original series. But
yeah,
there's room in my heart for all of it now.
Yeah.
And it took me a while, though. I'm slow at everything. So.
Well, I think we should get into the bad. What do you think?
Yeah, I guess we can go to the bad now. I mean, we may swing back to the good sometimes, I guess, but
yeah,
I guess it's about time to go to the bad.
Yeah, we're an hour and 20 in, and I think that's good for the good. And unless anybody in the chat would like to raise another good, but I mean, it's all good.
Yeah, I don't really have that much bad, but it's some there. So I'm relying on you to.
Well, as you know, I teach rhetoric and I teach writing. So for me, what I tried to do was anticipate what others commonly say and what they call you to the carpet for at the cons. If you're standing in line waiting to meet Jonathan Frakes and somebody brings up Enterprise and they bring up a gripe and then you defend it. So I tried to think of all the gripes that I've heard and I wanted to give answers to them so that people would feel satisfied and confident in liking Enterprise and saying, but, because I think but is important. Yes, the temporal war was the bad. But let's start. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I have 5 major gripes that are fandom wide, and I've written a couple of short paragraphs on each, but let's just go through them one by one so I'm not reading off like I'm telling you all a bedtime story. And also we can get into it and mix it up and talk about it, okay?
Certainly.
Okay, so the cannon busters, as critics see them, or the foibles, the things that people don't like. So one of the major ones is the unpleasant relations between Vulcanians and humans. And this is my answer. My answer to this is Journey to Babel, Season 2, Episode 10 of TOS, written by the great D.C. Fontana. This aired on November 17th, 1967. Here we see that Sarek is so disappointed in Spock's choice of a career working on a human ship in Starfleet that father and son have not spoken in 18 years. Moreover, this episode demonstrates the Vulcanians were particular and highly judgmental in their adjudications of species seeking admission into the Federation. Inasmuch, it is clear to me that the writers of Enterprise honored TOS, Gene, and Dorothy by playing out the backstory to the Journey of Babel. If you're going to do a prequel, you've got to know the backstory to the Journey to Babel. And with great care, attempting to convey the culture and political relations that predicated that. Thus, we see some snarky Vulcans. This is my answer to the people who take umbrage with these unpleasant Vulcanians who seem to think that the humans are beneath them. Thoughts to the chat and to my illustrious host.
No, that's absolutely perfect. That's not the only gripe about the Vulcans, though. But I don't know if you have any more about the Vulcans. That's another gripe.
Yeah.
But
keep going. Yes, no, you go ahead. Let's just do the Vulcans.
Okay. Again, I know I was mentioned. I name drop everyone, but it's because we all love him. The great Doomcock. He's a gentleman. Those of you all know. He hates First Contact, and he believes that it is. He doesn't believe. In other words, because now there isn't a canon mention in Metamorphosis that Zephyr Cochrane was from Alpha Centauri.
Yes.
But they could have just lived there. But First Contact does come along and establish him being on Earth. And Vulcans, he doesn't like that Vulcans were so far ahead of us technologically that they had warp drive so long before we do. And in fact, in Carbon Creek, if that whole story was true or not, even farther than earlier than that.
Yeah.
So he does not like First. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I agree with that, but I just want to throw this out to the chat because it's very important that you know this before Clobberin and I continue to talk about this. So Carbon Creek would be the episode where T'Pol's foremother, that would be what we would call a grandmother, goes to Carbon Creek on Earth in 1957. And then, of course, we have First Contact, right? We have Zephyr Cochrane. We have the year is 2063. Now, the Enterprise show that we're talking about right now happens between 2151 and 2155. Okay? So this would be a difference of 194 years and 3 generations. So that would be that of course, we would liken this to Sarek living 223 years. So what Clobberin's getting into is Zephyr Cochrane's origins and the Zephyr Cochrane story from TOS. And then there are also people who have a gripe about the amount of time that would have transpired between 1957, the 223 years of Vulcans, and 2155. So just so
yeah. Yes, and the thing is, it's still, even if you don't like First Contact, establishing Zephyr Cochrane on Earth, played by James Cromwell, looking the way he did, and all that stuff. Later, because of course, when he ends up on the planetoid with the companion, it rejuvenated him and everything. And I guess as a young man, he looked more like Glenn Corbett. What can I tell you? But there's still nothing that has ever aired on a regular episode of whether it's the original series or TNG or even the animated series, whatever, that established when First Contact happens.
Yeah.
So it just mentions it. In fact, they never even mentioned First Contact. They do mention Zephyr Cochrane and the inventor of the warp, the father of warp drive, but that's all you know about Zephyr Cochrane in canonized Star Trek, meaning TV. So when First Contact comes along, it's not whether you like it or not. It's fine. He doesn't like it. That's cool. It's adding something. Yes, it's creating from that point, but it's not contradicting anything.
No, I don't think so either, because within the text, it could be explained within the text. Like that moment when Khan walks over to Walter Koenig, walks over to Chekhov, and he says, I never forget a phase. Well, everybody already knows that Chekhov wasn't there. But the thing is that we assume, because we believe this imaginary world to be real, that of course Khan saw Chekhov in a corridor as he was strutting around the ship, right? So there some of this can be answered within the text. And just because somebody hasn't done that yet doesn't mean that it's all for naught, right?
Well, absolutely. Even Roddenberry, absolutely. And Roddenberry contradicted himself when the motion picture came along, and all of a sudden Star Trek takes place in the 23rd century when there are several references of the original show, which indicate that it would have been in the 22nd, but he just said, screw it. And do we care? It doesn't bother me, but you could, if you want to be a stickler, you could say, well, what the hell, Gene? But, we can't go.
But at the same time, Gene also, when he was taken to task for what star dates were, and he tried to explain it, he actually said they're just entirely made up. So the thing is that this gets back to my first defense when I was speaking about this same thing, right? When we're talking about the technology on the ship. Like, the reason why people don't like STD is that they didn't even try and balance the present technology with the original series. And that's all the fans want. We don't want like a giant Jolly Ranchers a hot glue gun to a panel. That's not what we want. What we want is a semblance of a balance between the retro tech and the tech we have now, so that we can suspend our imaginations and enter this beautiful make-believe world. And I think Enterprise does that to great effect. To great effect. However, I think STD rips the heart out of that intention.
Yes.
Takes a bite out of it, throws it on the ground, stomps on it, and then defecates on it. That's that's what I think.
Absolutely.
But you're speaking to a greater authorial process, and that is balancing the canon, the imaginary world, and the fact that Star Trek, and this is something that not a lot of the new fans know, that Star Trek is not science fantasy. It's science future. It's futurism. It's science fiction. So there is always going to be a period where, if we make a giant leap forward, that we're going to have to balance the technology so that the imagination can be suspended. We can't make it so far off that it's either Jolly Ranchers hot glue gunned to a panel, or, you know, mushroom technology that's borrowed from Nintendo. Yes, exactly. I do prefer my Shakespeare in the original Klingon as well.
Well, Joey Chu.
You raise a good point there, Eric, and that's another thing, you know, is the Klingorks. You know, the thing is that Klingons were the most dignified and wonderful species. They invented opera, they invented Shakespeare. These are marvelous, and they know, like, pancration, mixed martial arts. They invented their own form of Tai Chi that predates ours, and then all of a sudden they look like orcs, and they have marbles in their mouths, and they can't talk, and they have 99 nostrils, and they're hyper religious, and it's just nonsense. It's just nonsense. But I'm going to get into that later. We're going to talk about the difference between canon and continuity. We're going to get to that. But I want to satisfy the blood that people have for Vulcans. So how are we feeling about these green-blooded folks now? Now that we know about the journey to Babel, now that we know about the fact that the author, including Gene Roddenberry, has to shift technology and has to shift dates to help us suspend our imaginations. Have we done our job here, folks? Do the unpleasant relations between Vulcanians and humans and all the other funky stuff going on with the Vulcans, do you feel okay about it now?
Well, I hope they do. I mean, look, by the way, Zathras could appreciate this. I always sort of felt that the relationship between the Vulcans and humans on Enterprise was similar to the relationship between humans and the Minbari in some ways, from Babylon 5, Zathras. I'd like to get your take on that. A little bit, not a lot, but a little bit of it. Yes, the Vulcans, well, again, Raquel, again, we don't, there's a difference between contradicting and adding things to a lore.
Yes.
So there's not that what's going on with the Vulcans, whether you like it or not, it's never been established that it didn't happen. It's not contradicting anything.
No.
Although, in the sense that they, at least by the fourth season, they kind of thought, I think they even thought themselves that maybe we're showing Vulcans in kind of more of a bad light than people might have expected, which is why they kind of start to work on it.
Look at what happens in Carbon Creek. Look Carbon Creek, they're like, we like these humans, we're staying here. And here we have like people with an IQ of like 220 to 270 saying, you know what, I love humanity, I want to stay here. You know, you go home, Tamir, and just say we died. We love these. I think I love this woman. I'm going to stay here. And so, I think a lot of emphasis is put on these bad relations betwixt the Vulcanians and humans. And then people just accept that as the answer. And I just want them to know tonight that they should not accept that as the answer, because the journey to Babel was definitely used to influence the writers on this show. And in so doing, they are more canon than anyone else. It could be said, it could be argued, and argued well, that was the intention of the writers here. And we see that in Carbon Creek. We see that in this dynamic relationship that is meant to be these predicated relations. And when you go back and you look at Sarek when he is young, and he is getting into an argument where he's even accused of murdering someone in Journey to Babel, revisit that when you watch Broken Bow, and then come back to me and tell me, now that's not Star Trek. You will see that I have changed your mind, and it's okay for you to like Enterprise. I love you.
I love you for that. Yes. I don't know. I think the fourth season, though, remember, they did start doing some things where they were, dialing
it back.
Well, when they were kind of, the three-parter where they went to Vulcan, I'm sure you'll remember. Yes. I'm so mad at them for killing Admiral Forrest. I loved Admiral Forrest.
Yeah.
But the whole thing with Sirach's Katra and all that stuff, and the Vulcans, the Vulcan High Command was pretty nasty.
Yeah.
But again, that's 100-something years earlier.
Yes.
So a lot of people, I think, bristle because your portrayal of Vulcans in the other, So first of all, if you think about it, though, we've got Spock. Yes. On Next Generation, there's very few. They don't deal with Vulcans very much. Let's put it like that. Yeah.
Yeah, but DC Fontana specifically said that this was a species that was seeking edification and self-actualization. They were once a polytheistic society that was highly violent, and they were a mess. They were an absolute mess. Their society was a mess. And we've known this since TOS. So it's not to crucify Enterprise for creating this bad vibe with the Vulcans, because you're going to have to go to the great DC Fontana and have an argument with her, and you're going to have to go a long way because she's out there in the great perhaps.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's why I'm making the argument that Enterprise doesn't contradict anything with the Vulcans, because it does not. None of that's laid out, and it's not contradicting anything. You can say I don't like seeing the Vulcans portrayed that way, and that's fine, but you have nothing to base that on in terms of a contradiction.
Completely agree. I completely agree. So, chat, please log your votes now. Please let us know through thumbs up or thumbs down. Are you okay now revisiting this idea of what you have come to believe about the Vulcanians and about their relations that predicated TOS? How do you feel about it? Did we do our job? If we did, we're going to move on to the next point. The next thing that people like to gripe and whine and complain and bitch about.
Actually, Zathras, Robert Foxworth played a bad Vulcan, really. He was a bad guy. But very good actor, though. Yeah, he played a pretty good rogue admiral on Deep Space Nine as well. Or bad one. Sorry, played bad guy twice in Trek. Yeah, there you go. Where are we at?
You want to go on to the next one?
I guess I think we've kind of taken care of the Vulcans. Like I said, I'll tell you one thing as a fan that I didn't really care much for. Remember the episode, and I am drawing a blank right now. Second season, I believe it was second, where T'Pol was. We find out they were trying to use Vulcan mind melds as sort of an analogy for AIDS.
Yes.
And the bigotry against that one. But I just didn't find that to be a particularly good idea. And they touched on it again later, but they were acting like, because by the time we meet Spock, and yes, it's hundreds of years later, it is not a bad thing. It's not offensive. And Vulcans it just seems to be a natural ability that all Vulcans can mind meld.
Yeah.
Or so they claim in the show. So going back a little bit just so they could use it for that analogy, I thought was a bit of a flub for me, personally. And that's just a story qualm I have with it, a quibble.
I
That's
was
nothing,
okay
you know.
with it because I've always known, maybe it's because I've looked up to Leonard Nimoy my entire life, and I'm like I'm a rabid Leonard Nimoy fan, and you know, I've just always been into the whole Vulcan thing for a very long time, the Vulcan thing and the Andorian thing for a really, really long time. So for me, I like the fact that there are these smoldering, hidden, sort of shameful indignities hiding behind this culture and this species, and that the species overcoming all of these things was no small feat. And for me, like when I see when I think about the Vulcan mind meld being a taboo, I definitely think that that gets into some issues about caste systems in societies, and of course, you know, the touch that's allowed and that's not, and it's just, there's a lot going on in that episode, and I think that it would need further exploration. But I'm not even too upset about that, because, like I said, I know DC Fontana's words. I know her words are strong. And to go from being a polytheistic society that was hyper violent and very prone to violence in all the things that they were doing, including, you know, being sexually violent, to then doing to becoming what they became, which is these stoic people capable of controlling their emotions. I don't mind tinkering around with the idea that the Vulcan mind meld was not exactly a great thing back when they were violent polytheists.
Well done. Well done. Well, that's good. See, again, I think you did a wonderful job of defending the Vulcan gripes. So, wow, excellent. What is your? Oh, we're fantastic. I love that. I love what you said. I mean, again, that episode that kind of bothered me, but you do make a good point about it. And again, but the big key is we're talking about canon busting. It didn't bust any canon because it's never been mentioned before. So whether you like the episode or not, it's certainly not a, you know, coming from a bad place where I just thought you shouldn't do it or anything. Yes. And you've actually made me see that it doesn't really hurt anything.
No, it doesn't.
And they did touch on it later.
Yeah, and I think before that we sort of thought it was no small feat, that it was just sort of magical that Spock could shut off all of that emotion, especially because he was half human. And of course, there are people that say that that's even a canon buster, because only Gene was the one who said, well, he's half human, and that was an afterthought. And then, of course, there are people who you can see all over the internet, including even in books, where people say that that Spock smiled in the cage, and that was because they didn't decide on the character yet. That's complete BS. If you watch the live interviews with Gene Roddenberry, you will find out that actual scene where Leonard Nimoy was smiling, Gene Roddenberry is on record, on film, and you can see it on YouTube, saying that day Leonard Nimoy was actually nervous. He wasn't sure how to portray the character. Many people were already talking about the fact that it looked like the devil, and that was going to be really risky in a largely Judeo-Christian television environment. So there's lots of this stuff going on with these Vulcans. So let's just listen to DC Fontana on it and keep an open heart and an open mind about this stuff, because it's exactly like Clobberin said. Unless it's on record, it's okay to embellish.
Yep, and even some things that are on record got embellished, and people didn't really bat an eye about it. So.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you, the Leviathan. Thank you for being here. You had to run, I see that, but we appreciate you stopping by. Thank you so much.
Good night, Leviathan.
Have a great night. Thank you so much. So where bees we now?
I think Canadian Spider-Man has asked us the question about.
Oh, yes. There we go.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, I did hear about that. Even though I'm Canadian, I did hear about that.
Oh, okay. Nice. I agree, Eric. Eric Kane. We got fourth season gave us a little bit more Andorians, and I love Shran, and I would have liked to have seen more of that, and I know we would have probably if justice had been served and we got all 7 seasons at least.
Yeah, I'd like to say though that they have to stay Bashi. Like I'm not into this new STD Andorians, and they're not Andorians. They're not Bashi. They're not like any Andorian before them. There are only 4 species of Andorian, and whatever the heck those people are putting that look like those popsicles that you get from the ice cream van. But they're not Andorian. But yeah, I would love to see more Andorians, but I would like to see them done properly. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes. And I love Shran. Jeffrey Combs is fantastic.
Yeah.
You read that Shran, it's actually Shran there. Zathras would have been captain of the next ship if there was a 5th season. I know he would have been in the season a lot more. I don't know what capacity, but he would have been on more, they say, in a 5th season that should have happened.
Yeah. Okay, so let's move on to the next one. Or no, we have another one here from Canadian Spider-Man.
Okay. Oh, we were just there we go. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so we're just going to get through this really quickly. Lots of fans, especially new fans who aren't quite as hardcore and dedicated, they sort of get wrapped up in these conversations on Twitter. So I'm just going to lay this baby to bed right now. Recycling of episodes. And I wrote in my notes, please.
Nice.
Anyone who makes this argument has never watched TOS, TNG, DS9, Voyager, or Enterprise in order. Because the worst offender of show recycling is definitely TNG. And unlike all of the other Star Treks, TNG doesn't just borrow themes and concepts, it does outright redos. So if you object to Enterprise based on recycling, you are a fan who hasn't actually watched Star Trek, or you just watched it passively. Enterprise is the least of the recyclers. Some people bring up the episode Dawn, the Enterprise episode Dawn, and it is heavily criticized for being a ripoff of Enemy Mine. But I would like you all to know that Darmok did Enemy Mine first. And second to this was the DS9, The Ascent, which was season 5, episode 9. So if you reject Enterprise because of Dawn recycling, then you must also regret all of the time you spent with TNG and DS9. Second one, the DS9ers always talk about Second Skin is similar to TNG's Face of the Enemy. In DS9 season 3, episode 5, Kira is kidnapped by Cardassians and told she is an undercover Cardassian agent. In TNG season 6, episode 14, Troy is kidnapped and is surgically altered into a Romulan, just like Kira, and is a member of the Tal Shiar instead of the Obsidian Order. It's rip-off. So if you don't like Enterprise for doing a little bit of borrowing, you better get rid of DS9 too, and Enterprise, and the Next Generation. Then, of course, we have The Abandoned, DS9 season 3, episode 6. Odo tries to change the nature of a rapidly maturing Jem'Hadar infant. But we've been here before in 1992, TNG season 5, episode 23, I Board, and Baby Hugh, who might as well have been a Jem'Hadar. Then number 4, we have, I brought up the Mark of Gideon, because of course the Mark of Gideon is the gold standard for overpopulation. It was a story that Gene specifically asked the team to focus in on because it was in the headlines at the time. Of course, this is when people were sandwiched behind walls. This is revisited in some form or another in every Star Trek episode, every Star Trek except for Enterprise. All in all, discounting Enterprise because of recycling is dumb. What do y'all think?
Love it. It's so true, because, well, I mean, I can't even add anything. It's just something that was so perfect what you did there. I mean, it's not like it's innocent of it, but again, you can't. That it's not a good enough reason to trash it. I mean, were they kind of feeding on themselves a little bit because it was all Berman and Bragg and all those guys? Yeah, but you know what? It's not so much that if something feels familiar or like one of the other episodes, is it still a good take on it? And isn't it, even if it's similar, and plenty of times I like to see something that goes, yeah, you know, that episode reminds me of whatever. But it's still good.
Yes.
It's still good. Even if, see, that's never been a big deal with me anyway. People love to go. I had a guy, when it came to Enterprise, a buddy of mine, many years ago, we did our top 20 favorite episodes of Enterprise. Then this one guy was pissed off at me, not because of episodes we picked, just the fact that we were daring to say that there are 20 good episodes of Enterprise, and he had to nitpick every one of them.
Well, this is a crazy I would have been there.
I let him come on the show the next day, and have him on there. And everything he said, because he hated everything we said. I said, look, dude, this is clear you hate the show. Which is hate anything you want, that's fine.
Yeah.
But you hate it. And if you're bitching about that one's a ripoff, this one's a ripoff, it's his favorite. It was his favorite term, by the way. Ripoff was his favorite term. I was like, dude, okay, this was like that, that was like that, but nothing else has been ripped off ever. Just these shows. I said, we like these episodes, dude. It'd be one thing if you were a fan of the show and you disagreed with us on our choices. You just hate the show. And the term ripoff to you, that you're using it, I just don't even think you understand what it means.
Yep.
Because, like, this is the only show that ever, quote unquote, copied or ripped off something.
Yeah, well, you know, it's also really important for the folks at home to know that there are only 7 stories. Human beings are only capable of telling 7 stories. That is absolutely true. I bet you all think that I'm like cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs right now, but no, I'm not. There are only 7 stories. Okay, human beings tell the same stories over and over and over again.
True.
Man against man against nature, man against himself, man against God, man against society, man caught in the middle, man and woman. These are the same stories we tell over and over again. But you know why we like telling them over and over again? Because different writers tell these stories in different ways and make us feel like they're special. The way that they turn a phrase, the way they describe things, the adjectives they use, they make us feel like these stories are fresh. But these stories are not fresh. We've been telling these stories since before we even had writing. These same stories over and over and over again, back to orality, predating human beings being able to write. So the art is in not getting too close. And that's why I pointed out the exemplars that I pointed out tonight, because it is wholly unfair to accuse Enterprise of doing that when they did so many genuinely unique episodes. They didn't borrow as heavy as the other Star Trek series did. And when they did, it was nuanced and beautiful, and you had to be a brainiac chronic in order to be able to identify it. So I think it's unfair. And if you're going to be a what about, then you have to, like I said, go DS9 and TNG as well, because they borrow the heck out of everything, including films.
I've found, it's been my experience, that if someone hates something, they'll find they can talk themselves into anything, and they don't really have to come up with a cogent argument. They just simply have to say it. They just got their little reasons. So, what are you going to do? And this show seems to elicit that from a lot of people.
It does.
A lot of illogic from a lot of people.
Yes, it does. But our people, the true 66 to 05ers, we will not put up with that trash on social media. We will have the weapons of rhetoric to get in there and say, I call BS. And that's what I want to do. Give people a talking point to go, no, that is pure horse hockey.
Exactly. It just drives. Look, I know it's probably immature, but every time I hear it, whether someone I really like or not, take a shot at Enterprise and it's just not fair, it drives me nuts. And I want to, if someone will do it like I'm in a stream and I'll start like typing out a big defense of it, I'll realize, no, just
whatever.
Just cut it, don't do it. But I want to. Every time you hear it, it's like nails across the chalkboard to me.
What does Ricky Gervais say? Should have left it. Should have left it.
Exactly. But yes, it's not. I just love what you did there so much with the defense of saying that it rehashed or anything like that. I mean, it's if there's an episode that has a lot of things that are familiar from other episodes, which is fun, but how well was it done?
Yeah.
Was it good? But did it showcase the characters very well?
Yeah.
And that's what I'm more interested in. And I think these people just had an axe to grind. I think they were just pissed off at that point that back when this was running, and a few years later, they didn't like that there was a prequel.
Yeah.
That's by the way, I don't know if you. That's another thing, and I'm not including this in the bad, but one of the biggest knocks is how dare them do a prequel 100 years ago before Kirk.
Yeah.
I think that was a lot of it.
But I also think that people need to, once again, put that in socio-historical context. You have to look at the time in which this was done. And I want to ask you all what they did. Now, tell me, if you're a writer, if you feel this is reasonable, you have the franchise at your mercy and you're going to write for it. And you're looking around at the technology around you and you see that society is bursting with new technology and so much potential. The technology is just accelerating beyond your wildest dreams, beyond your wildest imagination. And so as a writer, you have Star Trek in your grubby little mitts, and now you have a choice to make. Are you going to talk about the way that it was in the past, what led up to it, and have a whole bunch of information and special things that you can talk about? Or are you going to push that technology and try and imagine it? And I think that there's a certain point at which you hit a brick wall. And, I think that the writers of Enterprise were actually smarter because they said, you know what? This technology, we've hit a brick wall with this. This is going to tip into science fantasy. We can't push futurism any further past what we've already done. So they decided to dig into the past. And I think it was actually a smart move because look at what the self-indulgent people did with STD and P-Hard. They pushed so far into the future that it was no longer science fiction. It was no longer science futurism. It became Mario. You've got the magic mushrooms and you've got, the water bears. And, it just became dumb. So I don't know if any of you can think of something past something like The Expanse. I mean, we're really living in a time where it's you kind of got to go retrograde, right? Especially if you wanted to do something really, really special with Star Trek and you didn't want to screw up and have the fans come after you with flaming torches. So I'm not quite sure on that one, guys. I'm not quite sure.
Well said as always. You had me going there for a minute there, Zath. I thought Zath said we got it. Someone mentioned the ending of a mock time. I just assumed
yeah.
Zathras is kidding, though. He's seen it. I guess so. You've seen it. Yeah, okay. I spoiled it, man. I'm sorry.
Somebody actually say that? Oh, my goodness. Somebody actually said that. Mark with the C at 9:51. Yeah. Mark. What a great comment. Oh, no. He ruined the ending.
Oops. Well, you had me going there, Zap. There. For example, that's just a perfect example of someone looking for something to hate. Is the argument that they didn't have a Star Trek style opening theme? Oh well, yeah, the theme. I don't know if you're getting to that.
We're gonna get.
Okay. So in that case, we will move on to the next point. Then let's see here.
All right.
If you're ready to, let's see. Look at Tilly on SCD, who is a triathlete from a race and beat crew members who are 75 pounds lighter. Yeah. And in fantastic shape. Well, because she's the second bestest ever.
Yeah.
Ever.
Just absolutely ridiculous. Okay, so the next reason, folks, we don't get to know the characters, and this equals bad writing like Voyager. We talked about this a little bit earlier.
Oh my goodness.
Often. But if we look to the episode count and how the other series developed their characters, this is a hollow argument. Enterprise only had 98 episodes. We did not know Worf, O'Brien, Troy, or many others by TNG's 98th episode. Enterprise needed more time, as much time as the rest. If we are going to judge Enterprise fairly, it would need 178 episodes.
Yeah, true.
I just, you know what I'm saying? Like, what if you were all in my university class right now, and I asked you all to explain some very difficult concept, and I told you that you needed to completely explain this concept in 500 words or fewer, but I chose to give the rest of the class, 95% of the class, I chose to give them 1,200 words. You would really think that I was a real jerk, wouldn't you? Well, that's how I feel about people who are like, well, 178 to 98.
Exactly. Plus, it's starting to, I mean, other than, as we mentioned, Hoshi and Travis not getting as much time as we would have liked, all these other characters are so wonderfully written in the 98 episodes that we get.
Yep.
They're up there with any of the others from any of the iterations, as far as I'm concerned.
Yep. And
So,
I've only got a couple of bad left because I don't really see a lot of bad here.
Go for it.
T'Pol's eyebrows, her ever-changing eyebrows. They wanted to make sure that people still found her sexy, and I don't know, maybe she had some difficulty with putting Yoo-hoo glue on her face, because of course that's how people disappear their eyebrows. But a lot of people are ticked off about it. And
Really?
And I'm here to say that if you look at T'Pol and all you see are her eyebrows, I have some issues with you.
She has eyebrows? Oh, of course she does, yes.
I have no defense for it. All I'm saying is, chat, hear me out. You should not be looking at your eyebrows.
But you know, Mark with the C, that point is true. But you know, the original series, Kirk, Spock, and McCoy are really the only focus, with a little bit of Scotty. Everybody else didn't get much. I mean, I love them, but look, Uhura, we love her. We love Sulu. We love, we love Chekhov and Chapel. But
that's a beautiful comment, though, because Clobberin, that's the whole reason why we judge every Star Trek by the original series. Is Mark with the C just rocking the Casbah tonight, because that is the most beautiful comment possibly said all evening.
Yep.
TOS did it in 79 with amazing writing. And you were right.
But yes, but again, you only really got 3 characters, plus Scotty was close. So really 4 characters that came away with that got a lot to do and were written. So whereas again, I don't know, you're talking about on Enterprise, 98 episodes, and they managed to do a great job with all of them, in my opinion, but at least only 2 of them got what you could call possibly slighted a little.
Yeah, but I love that comment, because that's the whole reason why I'm such a chronic stickler, stick in the mud TOS fan, because you've made my entire point. These sequels, these sequels, they can be very derivative, and at the outset, Clobberin said it's very difficult for Raquel and I to like anything after TOS. So yeah, that's definitely why I said there's you're going to look at all these sequels and you're going to have gripes with these sequels. You have to make sure that you're treating all of these sequels with the same markers, So good comment. Great comment.
Absolutely. Chekhov was amazing. We said it before. We told you last time, Zathras, like I told you last time, yes. I say what you want about Walter Koenig. He's brilliant on Babylon 5 as Bester. No question about it, man.
Yeah,
He's
sure.
so good. He's so good on there. Let's see. Where was we?
I think we were just talking about our bad, and I guess there's one bad left. We talked about that Carbon Creek thing, and I made sure that I threw the numbers out to people, because T'Pol was born in 2088. Her mother was Teles. She has no date of birth, but she died in 2154. And of course, we have that 200 marker, right? And her grandmother was Tamir. So that whole Carbon Creek first contact thing, you know, I wanted people to know the math on that. And it's also important to know that researching a civilization before contact is a big science fiction premise, this whole idea of being watched. So the fact that Enterprise went there is totally forgivable for me. And I only have one more bad comment, the bad, addressing the bad. I put here in my notes, most of all, there is a big difference between canon and continuity. Most people conflate these terms. They're not the same thing.
Yes.
Star Trek laws, and that's what canon is. Canon is the laws. Okay? Star Trek laws must be obeyed to keep the imaginary world intact. Continuity is about continuousness. It's about flow, coherence, and avoiding discrepancies within the writing. So, remember at the beginning of the show when I talked about how, what did I say here? So Star Trek must be nerdy, truly nerdy. It must be hopeful, optimistic, bright, non-political, edifying, questioning, and it must be cerebral. That's canon. Canon is that's the place you're going. But
Yes.
continuity is what Clobberin and I have been talking about all night. Just making sure that you keep your shoes shined and that you don't step over yourself and create a contradiction within the script. And that's another thing that you should take away from this cast when you go to social media or you're standing at a con and somebody raises an issue with you. A continuity and canon are not interchangeable. And if somebody asks you about canon, I want you to remember that the only thing we have here, these are all sequels, as Mark with a C pointed out. TOS is the only original, right? So remember when you're talking to them that Star Trek must be hopeful, optimistic, bright, non-political, edifying, and questioning. And because it was rejected by the network for being too cerebral, it must be intelligent. It must be science fiction. It cannot be science fantasy. So that's something that I want you to put in your tool belt when you're talking to these naysayers about Enterprise, is knowing your diction, know your vocabulary, and certainly canon and continuity are not the same things. When I say I don't like STD because it is not canon, you know what I think is canon, and you know the definition of canon. So you know that I'm correct. There's no argument to make here. There's no opinion to make here. But certainly we can all argue about continuity. But STD is not canon, so therefore it is not Star Trek. But Enterprise is most definitely canon. It's bright, it's optimistic, it's intelligent. It follows the rules of the universe that Gene Roddenberry created. So keep that in mind when you're defending the good and the bad. And I'll put it back over to my illustrious host, Clobberin. Clobberin.
That was wonderful. I can't even touch it. It's just so perfect. And it is what's what I've been looking for all these years, someone to help to team up with to defend Enterprise, and no one could do it better than you just did it. And there's the thing, I don't know what it is about people that won't give the thing a chance or just watched it a couple of times and 20-something years later they're still trashing it. Although some of them will go, well, at least that's one thing that the new garbage did. They'll go, well, yeah, man, that makes Enterprise look good. That's crazy when they do that. But they do. That's one of the common refrain now is, well, at least Enterprise was Star Trek, even though it was still, but it's better than this crap. No, yeah, it's not only is it better than that, it's insulting to it to even bring it into the conversation with filth like P Hard and STD.
Well, everybody should just turn to Mark with the C's comment, because it really does hit home here. All of this stuff is a remake. So if you're going to remake something, you have to follow the canon. You have to follow that universe that was created by that author. And it seems to me that everybody in this room tonight loves the imaginary world created by an author. And it seems to me that everybody in this room tonight, where we've come to join to talk about all of this, is not too keen on the corporate versions of the crap they're creating. No, there is no high-minded author behind this. This is now a corporation that's turned it into a product, and they're pumping it out, and it's just garbage.
Garbage from hell. Absolutely. Well, what about the ugly?
Well, wait until you hear my
Unless you've got more bad, of course.
No, I don't have very much bad, but you're gonna laugh when you hear my
I'm waiting if I'm ready for the ugly.
you guys, it's just hysterical. Okay, the ugly. The song Faith of the Heart. I have no defense for it. This was an insanely bad choice, which has turned into a comically guilty pleasure. Now, when my daughter and I walk into a room and it's dark and something's about to start, we actually start singing It's Been a Long Road, and we burst into laughter. Okay, it's not just the song, though, folks. It's the fact that they changed the song midway. And they dared to remove the title sequence, which was a questionable move. However, my daughter told me to tell all of you, and this is an adult woman, beautiful woman. She says, the haters of this song are space garbage. Tell them I said. But I have to give you guys a little background. Okay, so Where My Heart Will Take Me is the main title song of Star Trek Enterprise. It was originally titled Faith of the Heart. It was written by Diane Warren and was originally performed by Rod Stewart for the 1998 movie Patch Adams. The version for Enterprise was performed by Russell Watson. It remains the only Star Trek theme song besides Star Trek, the original series, that is not completely instrumental or orchestral. Okay, and where is it? Oh, yes. Where My Heart Will Take Me was played for the crew of the Space Shuttle Discovery, the actual Space Discovery actual, as their morning wake-up call on August 2nd, 2005. The song was also used as a wake-up call for the crew of the Endeavour during the STS-118 on the 9th of October, 2007. The song was used again for the STS-125 Hubble telescope repair crew on board of the Space Shuttle Atlantis on the 24th of May, 2009. So it has endeared itself to many, many people. And yeah, going where my heart will take me. And I wanted to tell the folks at home that if you hear that the defense that this song was the only song in Star Trek, that's wrong. Okay, I want you to know that Gene Roddenberry found out that they did the original series on a shoestring budget, and that's a very trite phrase, but guys, you got to understand, they literally did it on no money at all. So when they came up with the title sequence, I think it was a lawyer. You'll have to look it up, but I'm pretty sure it was a lawyer, if my memory serves, informed Gene that if he wrote lyrics for the title sequence for the original series, that he could claim residuals not only when it was broadcast, but if the show ever went to syndication. And of course it did. So there are actually lyrics for the original series title sequence. So if you are, I'm not saying you have to be, a fan of this song and the title sequence choice, and somebody says to you, well, that Enterprise, it's stupid. It's the only Star Trek with a song with lyrics. Why did they do that? I want you to wave your little Star Trek finger and say, that's not true. The original series title sequence had lyrics, and you should go read them because they're awful.
They are awful. Oh, well, I guess it's time to get made fun of, because you know what? I like the song.
Oh, you're like my daughter.
The soundtrack has a longer version of it, by the way.
Yes. Yeah.
Now I say that, nevertheless, as I like an old favorite saying of mine now, maybe it's a new favorite saying, is two things can be true at the same time. I like the song, and I think it was a dumb move making it for the opening credits. Maybe the end credits might have been okay. I actually like, if you go to the soundtrack or listen to the end credits, it's called Archer's Theme.
Mm-hmm.
And it, because I love the visuals of the opening credits, always have, and at least that song kind of does capture a kind of the heart of what we're talking about with those opening credits.
Yeah.
I mean, it fits. Whether you like it, the song, it fits it. But I think Archer's Theme would have, because for a Star Trek opening, you want something that sounds, that is, you don't really need lyrics, something that conveys sort of a very, adventurous spirit as the Archer's Theme. I think it's pretty good, the Archer's Theme. I mean, nothing's in the class with Jerry Goldsmith stuff like, of course, the Voyager theme or something like that. But, sappy, songs go. I don't know. It just never bothered me, except when it first came on. The first number of episodes, I was like everyone, like, Jesus Christ, what in the hell are you doing?
Yeah. Oh, Mark with the C is backing me up here. He just went and looked it up. So yes, I was correct. It was the contract. It was the lawyer who told him. Thank you, Mark. Yeah, it's been a while since I dug into that. When you get on these shows and you're live, you wonder the crap you'll remember, especially when you start to get up there in age.
Yeah.
So, sometimes I sort of have to scratch my head and I'm talking while I'm trying to remember the stuff, because there's just so much Star Trek jammed in my brain. But I just wanted everyone at home to know that, because, if you're a stickler and you really like the song, now Raquel has given you a way out. You can just imagine if they would have had to sing along with the chorus theme, which is so bad. It's way worse than going where my heart was. It's way worse.
As someone said earlier in the chat, it grew on me. They said that the song grew. It grew on me. I mean, look, it's sappy. Yeah. I have no defense. Because
pox grow on you too, Clobberin.
Hey, look, put it this way: Mark C is twisting my arm to do a show next week about bad movies that he likes.
Oh,
he's going to make a whole list of it. I'm going, wait a minute, dude, I can't think of any. Oh, it's just fun. I guess he means guilty pleasures. He's got a damn list going, and I'm like, there are a couple of movies that I like that I guess people think are bad, but I guess I don't know. I mean, I love MST3K when they make fun of bad movies, but I'm gonna let him make his list.
Really good. Mark is really good. I don't know him personally, but when I first came to Twitter, I watched a couple of shows he was on, and I think he calls himself a geek. But from when he was,
yes,
I thought he was a nerd. He's clever, and he checks his information, and you can tell he's bookish. So if he's thrown down that offer, I would take it. He would be a heck of a lot of.
We've had a lot of fun doing shows together. Mark, as a youngster, he bought comic books for me at my comic book shop. Then I met him many years later and we became friends.
Oh,
so he's and he is a good buddy. We've done a lot. He's a great comic book artist as well. And we'll be doing that show. I just told him, said, look, we're gonna let you make the list of them, and I'll throw out a couple. I'll throw out some bad ones because I gotta be honest with you. I guess there's some movies I like that I could go, I guess that's bad, but I like it. Like, for example,
I like the nostalgia, though. You guys should do TV shows as well. I want to hear you guys talking about Fantasy Island, The Love Boat, Banana, Magnum PI.
Well, look, we are going to do something. I've got a lot of different plans to do some TV shows, different things like that. So I love old TV.
Yeah.
But yes, so we're gonna do that soon. But I like the song, but I admit anyone look, I will not defend it. Like you said, that I don't defend. If you hate it, look. But I will say this to you: if you hate it, but come on, if you got some sort of a sentimental side, isn't there some goofy ass sentimental song that you like that you hate to admit to yourself? Even our boy Dimcock, who hates that Enterprise song, he says, I like sappy old songs sometimes. And he's brilliant at singing it. I'd love it if he sang that song, but he hates it too much.
I think for me, it's John Denver.
There you go.
Country Road? Country Road?
Well, I like that song.
Yeah, that's a guilty pleasure of mine. It's just that's a gooder. The chat. Anybody, do you have any guilty pleasure songs? Songs where if you're in a really nice car and you're driving somewhere really cool, like you take a trip to Vegas, you rent a car, you're going down the strip, this is the song you would turn down so no one would hear it. What is your guilty pleasure song? Please fill the chat. Tell me.
This one. Probably this one. They're the words to the Star Trek version of the song.
Yes.
Dimcock sang it one night, actually. Yeah. There it is.
Oh.
Gene, how could you?
Yeah. Just.
Oh my goodness.
You know.
I like that song, "Spies Like Us." Yeah, that's Paul McCartney. Yeah.
That's a great one.
Oh, he means the movie, I think.
Oh.
Yeah, that's a ridiculous movie. Yeah, I like it. Yeah, I guess it is.
It's a song too, so that's a 2-in-1 Canadian Spider-Man.
Bad movie I love Battle Beyond the Stars.
Yeah.
I love that. I saw it a zillion times in the theater. James Cameron does the effects on that thing. Roger Corman. I bet we have other full lovers of that movie in here. It's basically the Magnificent Seven or Seven Samurai in space. John Saxon is the baddie, man. George Peppard, John Boy. The guy who played John Boy.
Yeah.
So simultaneous. Robert Vaughn. Great movie. But it's considered bad, so that'll be one of mine. But anyway.
Ice Ice Baby and the Touch by Stan Bush. Unchained Melody. Canadian Spider-Man is a romantic. He must do really well with the ladies. So he'll crank Unchained Melody in the shower, but he's shutting that crap down when he's driving down the strip in Vegas. And Mark with the face of face, don't tell anyone.
Your secret is safe with me. I like Neil Diamond, so I'm
the Jewish Elvis is terrific.
I like. Oh, is it okay to like him? Is it manly to like him? Good.
I don't know. I just I love him. Unabashedly. It's just. Yeah.
I like Spies Like Us. Actually, the song and the movie, I got to admit, it was goofy garbage. I saw it in the theater. But yeah, so but that's gonna be a fun show. But anyway, that I think they should have used Archer's theme. I think that sounds better. They use it in the end credits, as you probably know, for Enterprise. But what else? I mean, look, this everyone. It's a broken record, but like what you want to like, of course. But if you haven't watched it in a long time,
yeah,
go back to Enterprise. Of those, I'm sure you're familiar with Az, the great Az of Heel versus Babyface, whom I love. I love his YouTube channel. He's on with Gary on the Friday Night Tights. Great dude. He's going back and watching it now and enjoying it. I think most people are going back. If all these horrible things that are with the Star Trek label on it that are such trash, send more people back to give Enterprise another shot, then more power to it.
Yes, but I also want everyone in the chat who liked it from the get-go to understand that you liked it for valid and intelligent reasons.
Yes.
And I hope we gave you some information you didn't know tonight. I hope that the rhetoric sort of gave you some answers to, key things that people take umbrage with. And maybe we've changed your mind. And if we haven't, that's okay too. But we did our best to move you on Enterprise, and we hope you'll give it a chance, because 66-05, baby. It's all about that here at Clobberin Times.
Yeah, we are all about that. Star Trek is the 66 to 05, and anything else is Star Trek in name only.
Yeah.
Jason C. How do you do, man?
Welcome.
Welcome, sir. Nice to see you there, sir.
That's all I have for you, folks. I hope I got at the big ones and explained maybe some stuff that writers are thinking when they're doing things. And like I said, touched on some information and some backstory that maybe you hadn't heard before. Clobberin, do you have anything else?
I think you laid out the case beautifully. I mean, absolutely, and it was really a wonderful job you did there. I've been doing this for a long time, just always getting exasperated the way people just are so unfair to the show, and I do believe it's unfair. Yeah. Again, it's not unfair if you watched it, you did, and it wasn't your bag. That is not what I'm talking about. But people just throw barbs at it all the time when they probably watched a couple episodes here and there back in 2002 or 3 or whatever, what have you, and then they just didn't get into it. And not everyone's on it. Same thing. That's perfectly fine. I just think a lot of people are unfair to it, and go back and give it more of a fair shake. What you talked about with the fatigue. Okay, I didn't have the fatigue, but at that time I hadn't really been watching the other shows. But for the longest time, I didn't go back and give some of the other shows a chance either.
Yeah.
And now I'm glad that I did. So those of you who have not, or please go back and look at it. Give it another shot. This is Star Trek. It is, you can find faults or contradictions or with anything if you look hard enough. But is it good? And the bottom line is it good? And it is very good. It's great in my opinion, many times. And I do not like it when people say, well, it's really only good in the 4th season. I don't agree with that at all. Look, I have a lot of problems with the Xindi arc. I don't think they should have done that.
Oh, the Xindi arc was not good. And
no,
temporal Cold War, because in order to be a Cold War, there can't be shots fired. So temporal war will do just fine.
Exactly. Well, see, again, and I just think the Xindi arc may have been a little bit more acceptable if it hadn't been a whole season.
Yeah.
I think that was a mistake, but there's some great episodes in the 3rd season.
Yeah. I think they're trying to start something epic like the Borg, like these the ultimate adversary, and make it multi-species living on that one planet, and they thought that was new, and see, this is another time where you're going to hear me defend this, even the Xindi arc, because at least it was totally original to Star Trek to try and do something like that. We've got the Cloud Minders, sure, but we don't have a planet that has a collective of all these different species simultaneously. So at least they were trying for something that was really original, and yeah, it's just harder. Like, it's just harder when you only have 98 episodes to try and make something live up to the original. Sequels by their very nature and prequels by their very nature, they struggle. And I think this show would have done a lot better if we would have had 178.
Oh, I'm all for it. I'm hoping there's a parallel dimension somewhere where that does happen. I'm going to try to find it, go live there, and go live there.
But all these actors are young enough that this could happen. But tonight, you guys, I really want you to think about what I said at the very beginning of the show, okay? It's very important that Star Trek must be hopeful, optimistic, bright, non-political, edifying, questioning, cerebral. It has to be intelligent. And for all of those things, if you're asking me all those things, I definitely believe that Enterprise had fidelity. It showed fidelity to the original, and I hope you feel that way too.
Absolutely. Oh, it had all the same. It had. It's like I say when people would ask me, well, why isn't the Jar Jar? But way before the stupid STD and stuff like that came out, why don't you like the Jar Jar Abrams crap? Why are you saying it's not Star Trek? And I would always say this. I basically would say this. It has, first of all, remakes of crap anyway. You could never be these characters. But secondly, it has no Star Trek heart. It has no Star Trek soul. It has no Star Trek intelligence. It's just Fast and the Furious with spaceships. It is antithetical to everything that Star Trek is about. It is phony crap. It is airsats drivel. It is not Star Trek. Star Trek in name only. And the Enterprise meets all those criteria. It has the Trek heart, the Trek soul, the Trek mind. It has it all. And great characters.
Well said. Well said. It has everything. It's got the heart, mind, and soul of real Star Trek. This show has fidelity. You don't have to reach around and try and make it Star Trek. It is Star Trek at its very heart, and people got to give it a chance. Get out there and watch it, and just enjoy it, because you're going to feel so good about the palate cleansing, the cleansing of your soul, feeling hopeful again, belly laughing again, having adventures again, and leaving Earth again.
We forgot one ugly.
What ugly?
And Mark with a C. did point. Thank you, Mark, with the C. I forgot all about this. If we want to tackle that there. That horrible last episode.
Yeah.
Well, I thought it was horrible.
Rushed.
Hmm? Yeah. I thought it was a bad idea.
Yeah, it's a bad idea, but I think that when you're scrambling, because when you're a part of something where everyone gets a certain amount of seasons and a certain amount of episodes, and somebody just comes along and chops your fingers off.
Yeah. I mean, the cast
that way. Yeah, exactly.
Oh, yeah.
Mark
the cast. Yes, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying, Mark with a C. Yeah, I totally agree. Didn't deserve to go out that way.
Yes, and by the way, about that episode, something that people kind of miss, because it was just a rotten idea, killing Trip, all that kind of garbage. But look, just everyone. I mean, look, you won't find too many people defending it. The cast hated it, all that stuff. But and here's the tragedy about it: that it was ending anyway. It was a tragedy. That last couple of minutes when we see them, all the crew there, about Archer about to start out the beginning of the Federation. That's what I would like to see a whole episode about.
Yeah,
that was, and you end with hearing the voiceover narrations of the other iterations of the Enterprise going out, doing going. So you're going to give us this like 50 minutes or whatever it was of 40 something minutes of garbage, and then end it this way, which you shouldn't be ending at all. Jesus, and again, I want to say something about Rick Berman, because Klutzman gets picked on a lot, and he deserves it, and all these other people, Kathleen Kennedy, Chris Chibnall, all these other idiot scumbags who run shows into the ground and ruin them. Yeah. Rick Berman has had the decency to come out and admit that, he says he understands a lot of people didn't like that, and he has admitted that maybe it wasn't. He's apologized for it.
I love that.
And there's a stand-up guy, in my opinion, that he just says, hey, look, I get you. I heard you, because people make mistakes.
Yeah, could you imagine if that Kurtzman moron actually did that? If he just came and said, look, can you please wipe this slate clean and start over again, because I pooped my pants. and maybe I shouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
What I mean, because he made a real stinker, and now we got to spend a whole bunch of time with him when he's got that real stinker in his pants. And it's not good.
Well, at least Berman gave us 4 years of a great show, but I mean, you can't like every episode, and he gave us a bad way, and he was forced to end it, like you said.
Yeah.
But he comes out years later, because he could have easily been a jag-off, and people who bitch about it and say, well, just bite me if you don't like it. Like a lot of jerks do.
Like the present people do.
Exactly.
Like the present people do. And this is the thing I don't understand. People are all, they act like that they're beholden to a corporation. You're not beholden to a corporation. It's okay that you're beholden to an artist, to an author, and that you like the world, the imaginary world created by that author, or even a set of authors who work really well together. Look at The Expanse. They're developing that book, that series of books that that gentleman wrote. And even he had a co-author for that. So, it's all right to be loyal to an author and to an idea and to an imaginary world. But no one here or anywhere else is beholden to like a corporation or what a corporation is doing to exploit an IP. No one has to say, well, if you're a real Trekkie. No. That's a bunch of garbage. There are definitely two cycles of Star Trek. One is author-driven, and one is corporate-driven. And it's okay not to like corporate Star Trek. You don't have to. No, you do not have to like it. It does not matter what anyone says on social media.
To those people, Star Trek is just a label.
Yeah.
Apparently. Because I don't have loyalty to a label, because you could, look, you could call anything Star Trek. I could introduce myself to you as Star Trek. Hey, my name is Star Trek. Am I Star Trek? No. So, yes, they have the legal right to put the name Star Trek on something. That doesn't mean it is Star Trek, because I'm going to judge it by its content. I have the content of its character.
Yes.
Not because it's called Star Trek. So that's why we came up with the term Steno or Steino, however you want to say it, Star Trek in name only.
Yes.
I don't have any loyalty. And, right back before that Odine garbage movie came out by Jar Jar Abrams, I kept hearing it And a lot afterward as well. People say, like, yeah, but if we don't support it, they won't make any more. And I was like, well, I don't want any more of that. That's not Star Trek. So you're telling me you just want to support it blindly? You go do whatever you want to do, but I'm not. Don't you count me out of it.
Yeah. And it's important for fans not to get this idea mixed up or to conflate this idea of continuity and canon. That's another parting thought that people really need to have, right? And I see that quite a lot on social media, and continuity and canon are not the same thing as we discussed here this evening. And I want to put emphasis on that, because continuity is contradictions or things left unsaid or undone, loose ends. You know, you want to talk about loose ends. Let's talk about what's the episode, Dear Doctor. And
love it.
And we see Enterprise looking back on this entire franchise and very lovingly coming up with one of the most beautiful continuity corrections I've ever seen. Literally just taking all these frayed ends, like a torn pair of pants or a torn skirt, and just drawing it all together and making it beautiful by giving us a reason why there were two different types of Klingons. Of course, this is due to the fact that there wasn't the type of makeup available at the time. There was no way to hire people like Westmore. There were no people around, and there was no money to create that. And when it came along, we created that, and we had that opportunity to do that. And then, you know, Dear Doctor in Enterprise, we have it correcting Star Trek in a way that made it make sense and made it seem intelligent again, because, you know, the doctor had to cure them before everybody was going to die, and it was going to have some side effects, and people had side effects, and now we understand, within the text we can understand this continuity, but it's not canon. Remember that. When people accuse you of saying, oh, you Star Trek people are always arguing about canon. What about that time? Yeah, that's not canon. That's continuity. And Enterprise does a lot to fix continuity if you give it a chance and watch it with an open mind. Especially watch Dear Doctor and say to yourself, wow, that's really cool how that writer thought of that, to just draw them all together in this illness, and that the cure would have a side effect. Oh, that's great. Okay, well, this totally makes sense now. Now it's wonderful. We have different types of Klingons, and we know that something went on with them, like the mutants, like the Earth mutants, right?
Yeah, aren't you referring to Affliction?
No, I thought that was. Is it Affliction? Was that the Affliction? Was
Fourth,
that episode? Yes, it's Affliction.
Yes.
It's Affliction. It's Affliction. Sorry, I mixed it up with Dear Doctor. Dear Doctor is also one of my favorite episodes. Which
it's so great. I love
Sorry,
it.
folks.
Yeah.
Sorry,
that's
folks.
all right. I wasn't sure which one. Yeah, but either way,
Affliction. Yeah.
Yeah, that made your list, of course. The Dear Doctor is, good God, it's so good.
Yeah, that's also a good one, and that's why I gravitate to that name. But yeah, it's Affliction, and
I think it was a two-parter: it's Affliction and Divergence or something like that.
Yeah, I forget. Yeah. But yeah, it's just it. I thought that it was just splendid as a hardcore Trekkie. I just completely freaked out. I was like, this is amazing. So
yeah,
Phlox has found this cure for this lethal virus, and it's going to give some people cranial ridges and take cranial ridges away from others, and this is what's going to happen, and it's just magnificent.
By the way, what do you say to people who, again, get to be sticklers a little bit about things, other continuity? One of the continuity things, canon things that people complain about, meeting the Ferengi in an episode. They're saying they like to say that first time they met the Ferengi on Next Gen is the first time they've ever met the Ferengi, but that's not definitively stated in that one.
No, it's actually not, and the Ferengi is a rabbit hole for any real Trekkie, anyways, because as you all well know, that Gene had been germinating this idea of how he wanted to have this incredibly, vile race, and he was trying to get together these Ferengi people, and he was going to turn them into the most heinous, villainous creatures. And then he saw the reaction of the public to that TNG episode, the first showing of the Ferengi. And he realized that it was going to be an uphill battle. There would be absolutely no way to reform these creatures as villains, and people just found them comical. And so we started to develop them into this amazing race. So, you know, stuff like that happens. You know what I'm saying? It's just...
Yeah.
That's what happens when you write so many series, and I'm gonna, you know, it's just like Mark said earlier, and I just love that comment because that's actually like how I think about it. The only original here is TOS, and everything after that are a bunch of sequels. And so you can try really, really hard to live up to that original, the real McCoy, and it's not, especially when you have teams of writers working. And sometimes, like you said earlier, even Gene had to make executive decisions to change things. You were talking about the timeline. I talked about the Ferengi, and then we had, all of a sudden, we had Ferenginar, and we had this species that was actually making comments on rights for women, and that is not where Gene wanted to go with it. So, yeah, we have to be generous with continuity when we have so many authors. That's probably why people love the Martin fellow so much, is, you know, he wrote all those books, and that's one single author. And then he has a whole team trying to adapt his books for television, right? But when you get too many cooks in the soup, one day you're going to have the soup and it's going to taste one way, and the next day you're going to have the soup and it's pretty much going to taste the same, but there might be something a little extra in there. Maybe somebody added a little bay leaf in there, and that can be troublesome. But I agree with you, Clobberin. That can all be addressed in continuity, and it's not canon. It's continuity.
Exactly. And look, fictional creations very often outlive their creators.
Yeah.
Their original creators. And when they do that, sometimes the estate of these creators own them. Sometimes unfortunately, these characters are gobbled up by corporations or whatever, and they go to other writers. It's just a fact. I mean, Sherlock Holmes even did it in a sense. James Bond actually did it. I mean, did it. Tarzan is owned by the Edgar Rice Burroughs estate, so no one's allowed to write a Tarzan book, but that's changing. We're just using them as examples. Comic book characters, most of them that were created in the 30s and 40s and 50s were stolen from their creators anyway. Yep. And so they get bounced around all over the place, and new writers take them on. It's with Star Trek, it's been a little different in the sense that after 2005, they did do a remake. It's been sort of similar. They did a remake, of course, with those 3 garbage movies, and they did whatever destroyed them. They did whatever the hell they wanted.
Yes, and they destroyed canon.
Right.
And remember that the canon is that material world that you feel, that door that you walk through when you enter the story. Is it bright? Is it intelligent? Is it optimistic? Is it science? Or is it fantasy? You see, when you switch from science fiction to science fantasy, that is canon. You're changing. There's no need to talk about head and shoulders, knees and toes canon. This is my head canon. This is my elbow canon. It's just more important for people to understand that canon is spelled CANON. There's no double N. And it is actually the laws that make up things like the law in the United States, or the books of the Bible, or the laws of a universe like the Lord of the Rings. And if you make substantial changes to that world, if you tear down the walls of that world, you have destroyed canon. So, you know, it is something big to say that somebody has destroyed canon. It is something very small to say that there are lots of continuity inconsistencies and diverging that perhaps the fans either like or they don't like, or maybe it's an oversight. Maybe it hasn't been said yet. Maybe it needs to be said. And in that, we see the episode Affliction. It wasn't said yet. And people used to make fun of Star Trek for it. and we fixed it with just a little continuity correction. Lovely job.
Well said. Absolutely. But if you're a fan of any character and you live in any kind of long life, you're going to see that. You're going to see them change hands sometimes and go into the wrong hands.
Yeah.
And it sucks.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I can't imagine how George R.R. Martin must feel about the sequel that HBO did, because of course that was made up completely because he hasn't made his final volume. So, you know, everyone is seeing that, but it's very important for people to understand the language that they use. A cannon with two ends is something you fire at the enemy. Cannon and of course I mean three ends or two ends, because it's CANON, but it's just very important to understand those two things. I thought Progenitor, when Tripp decided that he was going to do it.
Yes, it was great.
Yeah,
both of those are wonderful episodes.
They're both incredible episodes. They actually made it into my
yes
my top 5, Eric. Just beautiful comment. 2 incredibly intelligent episodes that are just these are canon. Just beautiful canon. Just this is the world that Gene Roddenberry wanted to bring us. And yeah, fabulous comment.
It was Dear Doctor is one of those things that not only is it just wonderful for canon, it's one of those things that kind of shows you Archer starts to think maybe, you know, this is like the beginnings of the germination of the idea of the Prime Directive.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And there's a lot of little nuggets like that all through Enterprise. You know, them start this planting seeds for things that you know that will come later in the history of Starfleet and the upcoming Federation.
Yeah,
Enterprise did a nice job with that. Yeah, oh, great ones, Eric. I just love those as well.
Yep.
But yeah, look, revisionism pisses me off, but sometimes that's a little bit different. Canon violations, or you know, just little flubs here and there. Could you, for example, was it, you know, what they did with Bashir later down the road when they made him an augment, sort of?
Yes.
You remember that? There's no way that was planned.
No, and I love that character because, of course,
I love him. Yeah,
Alexander Siddig, who actually has, I believe, 18 different names if you count up his names. You laugh, but he actually has, I believe, it's between 11 and 18 names.
I thought you were just kidding.
No, you'd have to go and look it up. Anyway,
okay.
He's of North African descent. And he has made the most wonderful comments about what it was like to be a part of the Star Trek universe and being represented as a North African, and just how much he loved the series. And yeah, I think, you know, the continuity choices, I think we can nudge them here and we can nudge them there. But it's the canon things that really begin to move me. And I see people arguing about continuity, and people can argue about continuity in front of me because, of course, that world shifts and moves, as you know. Shifts and moves. That's a double negative. It moves. There's an ebb and flow with it as these writers come in and make their indelible marks on it. But canon is where things start to really stick for me, right? Like, I didn't like DS9 because DS9 wasn't bright and optimistic and cerebral and agnostic, actually atheistic. It should be for atheists. And so this is where we see the rubber hit the road. This is a real canon violation. This is when Trekkies need to stand up and say, but our author, this is not what our writer intended. But then you hear after comments of people turning around saying, you know what? Don't be too hard on DS9 because Gene might have not only approved of it, but loved it in the context of how he served. So his service influencing that show probably would have made him like it. So, you know, he probably... Yeah. I can definitely tell you there's no way any of that religious stuff would have flown with him. All that stuff
yeah,
in the dumpster. So, you know, that's, to me, that's canon, right? Because we're, once again, that's the world that takes shape, that's created by the author. Whereas the continuity, nudge it here, nudge it there, Eminem here, Eminem there. You know what I mean?
Sure. Oh, well, yeah, absolutely. Now, I wonder if you would have been able to sit with Gene and say, okay, but Gene, think of it this way. Is it really religious, or is it the opposite? Because we're saying these aren't really gods; they're just extremely advanced aliens that would seem like gods. Remember Who Mourns for Adonais and other times? Remember all that stuff in Trek about how when you go to a planet, the Picard, when you go to a planet, you seem like a god. These aliens are just, maybe this is a statement about, is this a god, or they're just really, they're aliens. They're not gods. The prophets are not gods.
Yep.
So is it religious? Yes, the Bajoran people are religious about them. Yes.
That's it. You know something? That is a very good point. And that point probably would have been made to Gene on the set. If he would have, if he wouldn't have been a drug addict and he wouldn't have harmed himself, and it's not like Gene is a bad man. Lots of authors throughout history, from Samuel Taylor Coleridge down to Edgar Allan Poe to Stephen King, almost every author you've ever met, aside of me and a few others, they use and abuse drugs so that they can write prolifically. They admit to this openly, and for Gene, it was his demise. And obviously, he gave that interview with Humanist magazine, and he said at the end of his life, and the interview, I think, went on for 4 or 5 days. And in as much, he said, I shouldn't have accepted production credit when I was writing. And, he was writing all the way up to Daedalus. And they roped him, as you well know, Clobberin, back into Star Trek when he was ready to go do something else. And so, I love Gene. And I think he was a great and wonderful writer, but he undid himself. And at the end of his life, he was becoming a rabid atheist, and he was moving more and more towards behaving boldly towards his lack of faith and being open about it. But he was also a very kind man, and he listened very well, and he tried to see things from everyone's perspective. So I think that if he were on set and somebody said, no, this is the way we're going to do it, I think Gene would have said, okay.
Yeah, I mean, the prophets aren't God. They're not God. No. I mean, they are aliens.
They're paw race, and they're the wormhole aliens, and I think that would have passed the sniff test for him. But
you never know. But I agree. I think so.
Yeah, but it's just lovely to be able to speak with somebody and to have a chat present where people recognize the difference between canon and continuity in the intellectual sense, so that the delineation can happen and you can have an intelligent conversation about what risks ruining the franchise and what is just simply something that somebody has failed to write or wrote with undue or not enough care and attention.
Well said, absolutely. And the bottom line, everyone, is that Star Trek Enterprise deserves as much respect as all of the other well, except of course the original series, because nothing deserves as much as that. But it deserves as much as, I mean, I'm not telling you to like it more than the other ones, but it deserves just as much as TNG, DS9, or Voyager. It's right there with them. I like it. I mean, it's almost my second favorite. But I got to admit, DS9 may have sort of kind of supplanted it. I don't know. It's right up there with. I mean, it's almost like a dead tie between those two for my second favorite. Yeah. Which it doesn't matter. I just like them both a lot, and I love them both. And I just think it gets too much abuse, and every time I hear somebody do it, it really aggravates me. And I always go, God damn it! I just want to go on my show and talk about it with someone. And you have, I mean, because I've done it before way back, but not quite like this, and never like this. Never had someone on who could do it so brilliantly like you have done. I just appreciate what you've done here so much tonight. I don't care if we change anyone's minds or whatever like that. We've got a lot of people here who agree and like the show a lot. So
yes,
but I don't know if anyone who hates it, said, let me see what those two are talking about. But it happens.
Yes.
We love you if you listen to this later or whatever, and you want to see, convince me, hotshot. Yeah. All right, let's see you two. Then we love you for it, even if you agreed or not. If you did, fantastic. If not, at least you listened and you entertained it, and that's good. So, well, I guess unless you had anything to add to the defense.
I just want to say that I consider it an honor and a pleasure to be on this show with you, and not just because of streaming. Because to tell you the truth, I could do this if we weren't streaming. If you and I were just hanging out somewhere.
Absolutely.
You are a true Trekkie. I just absolutely love you. I just love your company. And
thank you so much.
Such a great chat. You guys are just wonderful, wonderful people, and thank you for spending time with us. And for all of your terrific comments and just adding to what we're doing here, and just being really great Trekkies. You guys are just awesome people. Thank you so much for coming, and thank you for having us and indulging us in this way.
Well said, as always. I want to thank everyone for popping in tonight. The great Chris Persia was here. Thank you, sir. My good friend, my good buddy, Eric K. Eric, I'm always happy to see you, my friend. Thank you so much. And Inim, I can't really pronounce it, but you just popped in there. And let's see. I got never saw Enterprise. We'll have to watch the stream when. Okay, well, yeah, well, good. I guess I don't think we get all that spoiler or anything. But since you have not seen Enterprise, I hope you'll give it a look sometime if you're a Star Trek fan, or even if you're not, you might enjoy it. I hope you do.
Oh, I should also say I am publishing a series of digital folk tales. I call them a supper party series, and it's because these are stories that I've written for various friends who have dinner parties, and I just sort of stood up and read these stories to everyone to entertain them. And so I've put them in written form and I've published them. You can find them under RM Briggs on Amazon, and you can also find them on any Kindle device or on your Kindle app. Just look up RM Briggs. So yeah, these are digital folk tales. They are science fiction. So I hope some of you will check them out.
I want to find that and put a link. But I wish I'd thought about this before. I'm sorry. I wish I should have thought about it.
Just don't worry about it. I'm not here to sell anything, but I just if you're interested in my work, please look under RM and then Briggs on Amazon or on Kindle. And if you like science fiction and it's 18 plus, make sure that you're not giving these kids these stories to kids. But yeah, and I'll be publishing one every month for the next 10 months. So there's 2 out right now, and there's more on the way.
But what's it? If I go to Amazon and I just hit RM Briggs, that would pull it up.
And there's 2 stories currently published. One is called Jack, The Light on the Porch, and another one that's a little darker, that has some serious content in it, that gets into some serious issues, and it's called Charmaine and The Lift. It's Charmaine.
Oh, okay.
So
I'm gonna put.
They're all short.
I'm gonna put a link. Okay, I'm gonna put a link. Because I think I found it. I'm gonna put a link in the chat there. I totally forgot to ask you about that.
Oh, that's okay. Don't worry about it.
There's a link, everyone. I hope that link works, everyone. But if not, you can. I'm gonna have one put in the in my bio from now on, in my thingy when I get, because I wish I'd thought of it. I'm so sorry. Yeah. But thank you thank you for mentioning that, because I would have forgot like a dummy. I'm sorry.
No, you're not. You're one of the sweetest people I've ever met in my life. You are such a kind and wonderful Southern gentleman. I just think you are the cat's meow. So don't even go there.
Thank you so much. Everyone in the chat's going to be laughing at me for that. I hope. Let's see who we have. Canadian Spider-Man still does whatever a Canadian Spider-Man can. Thank you for being here, my friend, as always. Yes, indeed. Well done, Raquel. She did. Oh, look, I didn't do anything. I just sat here. She was amazing.
Oh, no. Awesome.
Let's see here. Jason C., I appreciate you popping in. Thank you. Mark with a C. Thanks, buddy. As always, thank you for coming in, sir. Let's see here. I'm forgetting some of them. I can't pronounce your name. I barely made it out of the third grade, buddy, but it spells N. But you have always been very cool, and I always appreciate you popping in. I've seen you in other streams there. Zaprus, if you're still out there, brother, thank you for popping in. It is great to see you. I'm trying to remember everyone who popped in. If I forgot anyone, everyone, I'm going to pull out the old man card and say, I forgot because I forget things because I'm old. And I'm sticking to it. Yeah, so anybody who was here tonight, though, and if I missed you, I'm sorry. Thank you so much for hanging out with us tonight. I hope you enjoyed it as much. You couldn't enjoy it as much as I have. It's not possible because I've had a fantastic time, but I hope you did.
Yeah.
And thank you. And I'm going to thank the great, magnificent Stone Loki. I'll be on his show tomorrow night at 7. I think we're doing one as always. I want to thank him for this wonderful outro he has made for me.
Oh, I'm going to interrupt Clobberin again. You guys, you always forget to tell this to you guys, but I have to do it. If you enjoyed this stream, if you enjoyed this person whom we all obviously love because he's terrific, please subscribe to this channel and please hit your like button and your notification bell. Then you'll know when he's on. And you can also follow him on Twitter because he gets around a little bit. There are a whole bunch of people who he sits in with and he talks about a variety of subjects. So if you love this channel, please support it. Don't forget. Sorry for interrupting you.
No, thank you. Thank you so much. And yes, I do have a lot of other streams on here with other. I do a lot of comic book stuff. Last week I did one about my favorite character, the ever-loving blue-eyed thing, with my friend Carlos. This past Saturday night we did the history of Star Trek comics. That's a little misleading title. We just talked about a timeline of Star Trek comics. We didn't go deep on that, but I think we covered most of it. I don't know. I think we covered a good bit of it, but we tried to fit it in. And you have to go fast on a stream like that with that much info. You just kind of touch on it. So you decide if you hear that. I hope you like it. And I've done many other things. Well, just check out the other videos, the other streams. They're all very long because we talk a lot here. That's what we do, and we enjoy it. So again, I want to thank you all so much for being here. I really appreciate it. You've been fantastic, all of you. Thank you again to the great Stone Loki for this outro. Good night, everyone. Thank you so much.